dude just said. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to Thursday. And around here, we like to call it Thankful Thursday. Hit me some thankfulness.
You got to be more thankful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. You're a gentleman and a scholar.
We thank you so much for this bountiful harvest of Domino's, KFC, and the always delicious Taco Bell.
Have you said thank you once?
Thank you.
There it is. Thankful Thursday. Thankful because thankful all Thursday also means that Friday's almost here. So that's good. But I'm thankful. JP's pushing buttons on the board. Hey, man, how are you?
Great. How about you?
I'm good. I'm thankful for you.
I'm thankful that you're thankful.
Well,
And
I'm
thankful
that you're thankful that I'm thankful. Thank you very much. We got a great show laid on for you. You know the deal. Thankful Thursday comes up where some people we're thankful for. At halfway through hour number 2, we're doing a round of Butters and Lee. So that's coming up. Butters and Lee halfway through hour number 2. And then we got a whole triple dipper. So hit it, man.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right. 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. The Triple Dipper first out the gate. I'm calling it accountability at last. Like, wow, there's actually some things that are happening. Like people are being called in to give testimony and being indicted and being investigated. And you're looking at it going, why did it take this long? But nonetheless, it's happening. So I got several stories on that. Things you're going to go, yeah, that needed to happen. Accountability at last. That's number 1 on the Triple Dipper. Number 2, going to do a round of go woke, go broke. Listen, I don't know what Hollywood's up to. I'll talk about it more in my monologue here in just a minute. But it's like they cannot figure out that the world of woke has passed them by and they are no longer in vogue. So how about you stop? Go woke, go broke, Hollywood edition coming up, number 2 on the Triple Dipper. And then number 3, I didn't get to it yesterday or the day before for that matter, but I'm going for it because it's an evergreen topic. You get it? Evergreen, recouping the green new steel. That's where we are. I even added to it, got new stories to add to the fray. So yes, recouping the green new steel is number 3 on the Triple Dipper. All right, we're going to jump on into today's Rightside Way opening monologue. I'll remind you guys, as always, that attorney Stan McDonald is indeed the daily sponsor of the Rightside Way. Stan McDonald, he's a longtime 30-year veteran in the practice of law. I've known him for a number of years, and I am proud to say that he is the daily sponsor for the Rightside Way. All right, let me just jump on in here. And so, well, the next reboot of DC Comics' Superman character is going to hit the theaters this weekend, and cue the controversy. Got to have controversy, right? It's Hollywood. Director James Gunn was speaking about the upcoming movie, and he made sure to note that the movie is about politics, he says, and stressed that we should all just note that Superman is an immigrant. What? Gunn went on to say in another recent interview that, quote, this Superman does seem to come at a particular time when people are feeling a loss of hope in other people's goodness. I'm telling a story, he said, about a guy who's uniquely good that feels needed now because there's a meanness that has emerged due to cultural figures being mean online. What is he even talking about? Come on, man, just make a movie about a hero and give us some entertainment. That's all we want. We're not looking for your preachiness. And by the way, here's an idea. Why don't you go ask Disney how that Snow White flick worked out for them when the star, Rachel Zegler, came out and famously said a string of wokeisms that turned off audiences before it even hit the screens. Snow White, one of the biggest flops in all of Disney history because audiences were turned off by the preachiness of the ones who made it. But the Superman thing got worse when the actor David Corenswet, who I admit I've never heard of, David Corenswet did an interview and declined to include the word America in Superman's famous line of truth, justice, and the American way. Why? Fox News contributor Kellyanne Conway, she was asked about this. She's a former Trump aide. She took issue with Superman and Corenswet's lack of America comments. She said, quote, I can't believe we've come down to that. We don't go to the movie theater to be lectured to and have somebody throw their ideology on us. And she's right. We don't. We want heroes because they're not only the best of us, but they inspire us. They embolden us. They make us proud. They remind us of who we are. Not preachy DEI-based wokeisms that tell us in every breath how we should go be better people. Here's an idea. Go fight the bad guys. Don't fight the audience. When I was a kid, I loved comic books. I did. The real kind, the kind that came in a rack at the corner store and they cost a quarter. I'd get some allowance money, ride my bike down to the corner store with a few redeemable Coke bottles. I'd count out my coins on the counter and pick out one or two comics. But of course, I had to read them halfway through in the store before I bought them, just to make sure, which always made the guy at the counter stare at me and say, "Hey, kid, you got to pay for them before you read them." Yeah, I was a fan of superhero comics mostly. Batman, Superman, Iron Man. Also loved Sergeant Fury and the Howling Commandos and Sergeant Rock. But my favorite was always Captain America. He was the best. I mean, he's part soldier, part superhero, all America. Mr. Red, White, and Blue. He stood for good things, patriotism, right over wrong, duty, honor, country. I mean, I was all in. Well, allegedly, Captain America is now woke. A recent new version of the Marvel's Best was released a couple of years ago, and you guessed it, on the 4th of July, in the new version called The United States of Captain America, multiple caps existed in a form of community activists. What? Yes, community activist Captain Americas. The quotes from the disjointed Captain America characters said things in the comic book like, quote, "The American dream never really existed." Another one said, "The American dream is an American lie." And people come here believing in something, quote, "but too often we turn our backs on them." They also made sure to include a gay homeless Captain America because I guess there's a big audience out there among gay homeless people who need a hero. Apparently nothing is sacred, not even Captain America. Earlier this year, Marvel Studios made Captain America: Brave New World, starring Anthony Mackie as the newest rendition of Cap on the big screen. But Mackie lost a lot of his potential audience ahead of time when he said in an interview, quote, "To me, Captain America represents a lot of different things, and I don't think the term America should be one of those representations." Well, Anthony, his name is actually Captain America. So yeah, he was designed for the sole purpose of representing our great nation. But there's actually a reason why Captain America exists at all. He was actually drawn first in 1941 to inspire U.S. readers in the early days of Nazi tyranny and just before the onset of World War II. He was always heroic and upright, the best of us. In one issue, Captain America actually punched Adolf Hitler right in the mouth. I got news for Hollywood. Captain America ain't woke. In similar fashion, though, I will say Superman used to be the central character in a radio show that played during World War II as well. At a time when the Axis troops were sweeping across Africa, moving towards Stalingrad on the Eastern Front, Superman's character told the listeners that his mission was, in fact, to fight for truth, justice, and the American way, no matter what the actor named Colin Sweat says. In October of 2021, though, The Hill magazine noted that the American way was dropped from Superman's motto. They converted it to truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. Does that have the same ring to it? DC Comics said it was to build a broader storyline to, quote, honor Superman's long-lasting legacy. Whatever. What is it about the progressive left that makes them think that we don't want actual heroes? That all we wanted is big, preachy, woke social justice warriors? There's a reason why Captain America: Brave New World was a flop. There's a reason why Snow White was a complete debacle at the box office. There's a reason why expectations are now being lowered for Superman, but there's also a reason why Top Gun: Maverick was one of the most successful movies of all time. You see, Top Gun: Maverick spent 2 hours reminding us of the greatness of who we are, celebrating action-based heroics, letting us enjoy seeing bad guys put in their place while unapologetically waving the American flag in the whole world's face. You see, the American dream is more than a dream. It's a reality. It's the idea that every individual has certain inalienable rights, opportunities, abilities to not just survive, but to thrive, simply by virtue of living in the greatest nation on the face of the earth. We have to resist the revisionist version of the United States that comes so often out of woke Hollywood versions of America that the big studios keep trying to foist on us. I got to tell you, I've been around the world. I once had an Afghan man stand amazed at some of the things that my team had. Things that were novel to him, but common to us. Things that were so first world that his third world mind could hardly take it in. I'll never forget as he looked at a power saw like he had just found a gold bar, and he looked at me with amazement, and through my interpreter, he said, "In America, you have all the possibilities." And he was right. I've seen other places. I know what we have that they don't. I understand what it means to not be free because I've seen it up close and personal. Much of the rest of the world still has an idealized version of the United States in their minds. They see how little they have, how little freedom they have, And they understand that the shining city on a hill is still out there. It's us. But we could lose it if we're not careful. If we forget the value of who we are as a nation, we could wind up embracing apathy. And the world would take note and the shining city would go dark. So yeah, we cannot sit idly by and allow the reputation, the capabilities, the freedoms that have all wrapped themselves together into the American dream to become so tarnished by Hollywood that they can be easily rewritten in comic books like some cheap storyline. The American dream is still very real. The notion of Captain America being woke, it's ridiculous. It's actually offensive. It's insulting to think that they thought they could get away with that. In fact, when it comes to resisting the woke revisions of our great country, it was actually a quote from Captain America's character himself, who said one of the greatest things ever about it. A great quote, comes straight from a comic book. I read it before, but I'm going to read it to you again right now. This is a Captain America quote. You ready? He said, quote, "It doesn't matter what the press says. It doesn't matter what the politicians or the mob say. It doesn't matter if the whole country decides that something wrong is something right." He said, "This nation was founded on one principle above all else, the requirement that we stand up for what we believe, no matter the odds or the consequences. So when the mob and the press and the whole world tell you to move, your job is to plant yourself like a tree beside the river of truth, and you tell the whole world, no, you move." Does that sound woke to you? Not to me, it doesn't. But that's what we got to do. We got to stand. We got to draw that line in the sand and dare them to cross it. As liberal progressives seek to even controvert the meaning of our well-loved comic book characters that were actually first designed for the simple purpose of inspiring and entertaining people during a time of war and to bring about patriotism. We need to say to the world, say to Hollywood, no, you move. And by the way, while you're at it, leave our Captain America and Superman alone. And that's a wrap for the Rightside Way. Yeah, can you imagine making Superman actually stop saying America and even in one edition withdrawing his U.S. citizenship? Or how about, can you imagine Captain America, who did that quote that I just had, suddenly being woke and being a social justice warrior? No one signed up for that. Hollywood needs to stop playing around. Go invent new characters if you want to. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. What, W01, I guess. Go to flight school as a W01?
No, what's different today is that you actually get commissioned as a W1 pretty early in the pipeline. Back then, you didn't get it until you were done flight school. So you go through as a warrant officer candidate. And what it does is it changes your date of rank is what it really does. I mean, you're still treated like, you're an idiot, whether you're a W1 or not, but your data rank changes. Yeah.
You guys, I made the joke earlier about the warrant officer mafia.
Yeah.
Y'all are, as warrant officers, you're technicians, you're technical specialists. You have niche, basically, skills and knowledge, but you're also this kind of in between that folks who are junior in rank or junior as officers always look at you like, I don't know what to do with you right now.
Right.
Can I tell you what to do? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And but y'all kind of ride in the middle a lot of times, it seems like.
And we're the ones that keep everything running.
And you are the ones that keep everything running.
Yeah.
There's the backbone of the Army and the NCO Corps, and then there's y'all that keep things running.
Right.
But all right, so you became a warrant officer. You went to flight school down at Fort Rucker, which is now called Fort Rucker again soon, it looks like.
Yeah.
But coming up, and we were talking about your raisings, so to speak, up there in New Hampshire. We're going to go forward into your story here in a few minutes. But what about being raised, where you were, who you were with, whatever else? What do you think instilled things in you that you wound up needing later on? Like, was it sports? Was it family? Was it faith? What did you see in your life that you looked later on like, I'm glad I had that because it built me up?
Yeah, faith is certainly part of it. Now, my faith journey had its ups and downs, and the lowest point probably being post Somalia, when looking back at what happened there, based on what we were trying to do, in my mind there was no justification for the horrors that occurred there, and I couldn't accept it because it was horrible. I mean, there's not a lot of things I've witnessed that were as bad as what happened there. And we were there for all the right reasons. So anyway, but faith is certainly part of who I am, and it's come full circle. I think playing sports helped a lot too.
Was it hockey?
I played hockey. I played football. I mean, I wasn't great, but I played. And you learn about working and teamwork and your role in the organization to make the overall team a success. And those things to me are invaluable if you can learn them when you're young. So I think a combination of all those things.
Good enough. It's amazing sometimes what we draw on later. You don't even realize you've got it now. I can remember things as a kid that I didn't know that I grumbled about, and then later on you realize that instilled something.
Yeah.
So you went on though to do some pretty amazing stuff. So in the world of aviation, Army aviation, the 160th, which you're wearing the shirt right now.
I am wearing the shirt.
You are wearing the shirt.
By design.
Night Stalkers. So the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. I remember when I first got in, we called them Task Force 160.
Right.
But you guys were the premier Special Operations rotary wing guys. And how did you? I've never heard what is like. I know what selection is like to go to Ranger School. I know what selection is like to go to the Q course for Special Forces. But there's a selection process to go to the 160th. Am I right?
No, yeah.
So
It's very similar, actually.
All right. So tell me about that.
So when I first found out about the unit, I was in Korea. And at the time, it was still what we call a black organization, meaning nobody publicly acknowledged that it existed because it had just been formed in the aftermath of the attempted rescue of the Iranian hostages.
Right.
That's why the unit was created, because the analysis indicated that, look, you can't just throw together a bunch of assets and go try to do a complicated mission like this. It's not going to work. And so they created the unit, and there was going to be a second attempt, but most people don't know that. But the unit started training long-range missions in the desert, all the things that were required to go prosecute that target. And we're pretty much getting to the point where they were ready to go, and then the hostages got released. But the smartest decision maybe ever made by our government was, okay, well, the hostages are released, but we still need this capability. So let's keep the organization intact, fund it, obviously because everything runs on funding, unfortunately. And today, I mean, it's just an amazing organization. It's gotten more amazing over the years. So when I found out about it, it was, like I said, it was still black. And it's like people whisper.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. Got a bunch of y'all texting in already. I love it. 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. You can text it anytime. I'll take it. I got to tell you real quick, though, about attorney Stan McDonald. So, yes, indeed, I mentioned earlier, I know Stan. I think he's a great lawyer. He's also, oh, by the way, an OG ruffian from way back. I mean, the guy has been in the mix, in the fray, in the trenches on conservative policies and politics for years. But Stan McDonald, he has actually represented his clients as an attorney in literally thousands of real estate transactions. He can represent you in any local, state, or federal court. I like to always say, if Stan McDonald's on your side, you're going to have no greater friend. Likewise, your adversaries would have no greater foe. So, yeah, attorney Stan McDonald. The law firm is Wilmer and Lee. He's an America First family man. I'm going to give you his phone number. Are you ready? Here we go. 256-479-3020. That's Stan McDonald, 256-479-3020. And tell him you heard about it on Rightside Radio. And no representation made. The quality legal source reform, quality legal source reform the lawyers. Had a little skip in there, but I got it. It was clear. You could hear it.
The
Say
hiccup.
it.
Yeah. That's like an 8.5.
Oh, okay. Dang. All right.
That was your first hiccup in a while.
It was. Just right. It wasn't a true hiccup. I mean, you can make it sound like I was hiccuping during the
Yeah.
Let's see what we got here. The text lines. Connor from Huntsville says, hey, Phil, Connor in Huntsville. I'm sorry. I got to go read this privately. He said it's a private message. So I will read that. Thank you very much. Alec Mathen says, not only does it not sound woke about Captain America, it sounds a whole lot like Psalm 1, a tree planted by the waters. Well, now, Allie, I did not catch that, but thank you very much. John from Harvest says, Phil, sounds like I can give the new Superman movie a pass, but I wonder if James Gunn realizes that assimilation is a major factor in the movie. If Superman was not raised by nice Christian Midwestern family, he wouldn't have been the superhero that he was. Even SNL, back when it was Saturday Night Live, back when it was mostly funny, did a skit where Superman was not raised by a nice Christian family. He became a supervillain. That's a great point. Good raising. Raise up that child in the way they should go, and when they get old, they will actually be a superhero. There it is.
I don't watch any of the superhero movies like that anymore. It's
not even the Marvels.
No, Marvel's gone way downhill.
Marvel's got so woke.
Ever since Infinity War, it's just been constantly getting worse.
You didn't like the Infinity Wars at the very end when the women all said, "We've got this."
Nah, that was kind of my signal of like, okay, I can see where this is going.
I see where this is going. Okay, which one of the characters is gay? Thank you. Thomas from Athens says, Colonel, have a great deal of what's he saying? Redirect or what's it?
Respect.
Respect, I guess, for the United Cajun Navy from Louisiana, a veterans-only nonprofit organization. Well, good. Helping out big time the Texas flood tragedy. He said they do great things, very experienced after hurricanes. I've donated to them at their website. And since I have LSU friends up in North Alabama with connections to them, thank you for reaching it. Thank you for reaching out to Rightside Ruffians for prayers and donations. Yeah, that's great. United Cajun Navy. Okay, wasn't aware of them, but they do have a website, so y'all check that out. I'll remind you guys, the Red Cross, Samaritan's Purse, which I'm real fond of, and Church of the Highlands, which I'm extremely fond of, are all actively engaged, and they've got on their website how you can support what's going on to recover in Texas. David in Cortland, Alabama. Cortland, Alabama says, gee, Phil, your monologues are bulletproof. Man, thank you, David. Bulletproof influence, man. Dave from Capshaw says, he sent me a meme. He said, from the Babylon Bee. Oh, it's a Superman thing. He says, James Gunn releases film about the importance of accepting morally upstanding white immigrants who speak perfect English. With a picture of Superman. Well played. Well played, B. Well played. John from Huntsville, Phil, spectacular monologue. Also, I think they should make a movie called Super Phil. Okay. And his sidekick sound effect boy. That is just no. That's no.
Sound effect boy. That's funny.
Holy sound effects, Batman. All right. By the way, JP, did you know that college football is only 43 days away?
Well, actually, for me, it starts today because the new college football game came out today. I guess I'll probably be playing the new game.
Nice. Mark from Tony says, Eminem from Mark from Tony from Lickskillet, we are witnessing people in this world being turned over to a reprobate mind in real time, brother. We have to be like a tree planted by the water. We will not be moved. All right, listen, we got more. You guys text it, 833-68-RIGHT. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Bars, and it's like, wow, I read Tom Clancy books. That sounds really cool, And I was getting assigned to Fort Campbell, which is where the headquarters for the 160th is. So I'm thinking, all right, I go to Fort Campbell. I walk across the street, knock on the door, say, hey, I'm interested. What do I need to do? And I made the mistake of signing into the 101st Airborne Division before I went and talked to the 160th. And by doing that, committed me to 2 years in the 101st. But in the end, best thing that could have happened to me.
Got a lot of stick time doing that.
I did get a lot of stick time. And in Korea, I'd flown medevac. And medevac is, there's great experience. You got to make a lot of decisions on the fly, quick response, bad weather, and you're flying by yourself. I was 22 years old. I'm flying real world medevac missions, as the pilot in command.
Oh, good. Yeah.
You mature fast or you die. Yeah. That's basically how it works.
And others die with you. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was great experience. But what I didn't have is multi-ship, meaning like formation flying, not a lot of, I had a decent amount of night vision goggle time, but not a ton. And you really need a lot of night vision goggle time to do well at the 160th. So getting that extra 2 years on 101st really helped me out. I went to the instructor pilot school while I was in 101st. So now I'm an IP. I got much more time. I got a lot more formation flying experience.
Yeah.
And then the process begins. So the assessment, again, it's a volunteer organization. So everybody that goes there on the pilot side is a volunteer. And then you have to go through an assessment, a lot like some of these other special units that you're familiar with. It's a psych eval, it's a swim test, physical fitness test, flight eval, board, all that stuff. And it happens in about a 3 or 4 day period. the board's always the most dramatic because you show up with your dress uniform on, you go in there and a bunch of people look like they want to hit you. And they ask you very difficult questions and try to put you in uncomfortable situations. And, there is no right answer. They just want to see how you answer the question, what your makeup is. And that just begins the process. So then you enter Green Platoon. If they decide to take you, Green Platoon has changed quite a bit, but by the time you start to end, it's about 10 months where you're going through, again, land navigation, life saving, physical fitness, just, all the things that, soldiering in general require at a high level. And then you start basic nav, where you're navigating in the cockpit with a map and a compass. Because even today, I think the priority is, hey, look, you need to know how to navigate, even though you got multiple systems in the aircraft that'll get you there.
That's right.
When I was first in, GPS wasn't even in the aircraft yet.
Not at all.
The global positioning system, I'm assuming everybody knows what that is. But so we really did rely on a paper map and a compass. But you have to, hit targets in the middle of nowhere at night with very limited resources, and be able to do it every time, plus or minus 30 seconds. And it's not as easy as it sounds. I mean, depending on where you're trying to go, that can be a pretty difficult task.
I can just tell you, it's hard doing it on the ground.
Yeah.
Of course, you guys have a different terrain markers from up there, but you're also flying by it a lot faster, so you're having to keep track with the terrain.
Pretty quickly. Yeah.
Exactly.
So it starts with the planning process. You got to pick the right checkpoints, in order to help you find your way. And then you learn the aircraft systems, because the aircraft have different systems than the conventional force does. So you got to learn how all that works. Then you got to learn the special tactics, like things like fast rope maneuvers and aerial refueling now.
I was going to ask about that.
All of that stuff is all unique to the unit. So you have to learn all that and demonstrate proficiency.
Was
Ship
Black Hawk
landing.
your airframe at the time too, right away?
Well, it was for me. It's different now because it's a pretty expensive aircraft to fly to put all those hours on it. So now they actually start out in Little Birds, which are the Hughes 500s, basically, for all that basic nav stuff, and then they move to the advanced aircraft.
Okay.
So again, all that takes about 10 months. And then again, kind of like Jared said, then you arrive at the unit and you're still nobody, because you're the FNG, basically, if anybody knows what that acronym stands for.
It's the one we won't say, but yeah.
There are people that won't even talk to you. You have not proven yourself. You just because you got through Green Platoon means nothing, right? You have to then make your way through the progression, basic mission qualified, full mission qualified, and then the ultimate level is flight lead.
And I'm assuming Green Platoon actually weeds people out.
Conservative, just plain right.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just, man, covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show, this show right here. Goes from like Huntsville back over to Chattanooga, from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden, all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn, straight across the line to what we get to call once again for Benning, and then big old patches in North Georgia and Mississippi, all thrown in just for good measure. All right, we got plenty to talk about, but I will tell you right now, when I say all that about where that's just our radio. That's just our radio footprint. Then there's all of y'all right now who are streaming online, and we love that and appreciate that too. And that's on places like X and Facebook and YouTube and on our website, rightsidemedia.org. And then we got a ton of y'all that actually just download the show after the fact and podcast it. Love that. We're like at 340,000 or 335,000 downloads of the show podcast. Can't tell you how much we appreciate all of you. Thank you very much. Bam. That's just, it's why we do what we do, right? Jeff from Indiana checking in says, hey, Phil, I liking what Hollywood is doing to the saga of New Coke. Oh, yes. Yes. He said the company that will change the formula and everyone will like it better, but come to find out when you bought the bottle of Coke and was looking for something wonderful, it was not, because you liked the old taste, the one everybody was used to and liked. Well, Hollywood will find out in the long run. The old superheroes were why we watched them in the first place, not the new ones. I totally agree. Like when they did the first Captain America movie, it was spot on.
Oh yeah, it was awesome.
It was the character. It was exactly as he was intended.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, kind of, it was a superhero movie, but it still kind of made you feel like good versus evil.
Yeah.
Good guy, America proud, all that. And then, time goes on. We got to start throwing a little this and that in there from some wokeisms.
Of course. Why not?
Well, why? Okay, yeah, why not? But no, anyway. Dana from Athens says United Cajun Navy is still on the ground in North Carolina too, working on reconstruction from Helene. Wow, it's amazing the level of devastation in Helene, but also Texas. Have you seen some of the video of like whole houses being washed away by the water? It's just unreal. And I think right now, how many? Like we have dozens that are still missing. Is that what I read? Maybe more.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, look it up for me. That'd be great. All right, we're going to jump on into a dipper here in a moment, unless you already found it. Should I just stop and wait and see what you got?
I could have it. Well, I'm seeing from yesterday from the BBC, at least 150 people are still missing.
150 are missing?
Mm.
Good Lord.
At least, yeah.
My gosh.
There are the good stories that come out of this, though, like the Coast Guard swimmer you mentioned, 165 lives found. Yeah. I also just saw something a couple minutes ago about a missing dog in the Texas floods was found floating away, but he was alive in a washing machine. So he found his way to a washing machine, was able to hide out float in there and stay alive.
Wow.
So yeah, it's still good to see God, working his ways in tragedies like this.
I saw one of a lady. She actually floated 20 miles downstream, 20 miles, and finally was able to grab hold of a tree. And she was up in the tree, and somebody, she was shouting for people to see her, and somebody finally saw her, and they were able to get, I think, Coast Guard helicopter out there to lift her out of the tree. Just stuff like that. It's just amazing. JC Lacey Springs says 345,000 downloads. Just 18 months ago, you were eyeing 100,000. I know. It's crazy. It's an exponential increase, but thank you very much. All right, listen. So I'm doing this first dipper. I'm calling it accountability at last, because there are things that are happening, and you look at it and go, well, that's just being left unanswered. That's just a dangling participle. Who's ever going to have to answer for that one? And it's super frustrating, because you look at it and think, when is justice going to be served? Now, I will caveat, having said that, I will caveat as an attorney, I know that the wheels of justice sometimes turn slower than you would like, but that's partly because you have to build the right case. You have to lay the foundation. You have to do the discovery. You can't just say, is it going to be a case or not? Are you going to dismiss it or not? There's a lot more to it. But we're seeing a flurry here of late of people being called in to give testimony, of people being told that you're being investigated, of wrongs being righted. And I'll lead off with this, a heartwarming story. This is, libs will do this to conservatives, but it's not good for them, right? What's good for the goose is not always good for the gander. I've got a piece here for the Daily Wire. This is what sparked this, because accountability goes both ways. There's also got to be accountability for the abuse of the federal justice system. The Department of Justice is an extremely important component of the rule of law in the United States. What's amazing to me is how the Biden era abused it so many times. Daily Wire has a piece. I'd forgotten about this story. The guy's name is Douglas Mackey. Douglas Mackey had a popular kind of a pro-Trump X account. And during the 2016 campaign, all Douglas Mackey did was put up a meme, and he didn't mean anything by it. It was just tongue in cheek. It was Babylon Bee style, right? And the meme, what it was it had a picture of a lady, and I think it said, where was the sign? It said something like African Americans for Hillary or something like that. And it said, vote now, or they said
Democrats vote here.
Yes.
I think is the one I saw.
The one that got him in trouble was where it said, avoid the line, vote from home, text Hillary to 55925, as if you could vote by phone. But what the Biden administration said was, you tried to do this to gerrymander the election results. You were trying to trick people into believing they could just vote at home, and they couldn't. And I'm thinking, first of all, if you were that stupid, there's that. We can't fix
Exactly.
stupid.
Yeah.
But they were alleging that he had done something worthy of being sent to prison for 10 years for having that meme up on his Facebook page. And that's it. That's all he did. So the Biden administration was pursuing this avidly, and they got a conviction, believe it or not. He was convicted and sentenced to a stunning 10 years behind bars. But just recently, I take it back. He was facing 10 years. They sentenced him to 7 months. Okay, big difference. But nonetheless, the sentencing was 7 months. He appealed yesterday. A 3-judge panel from the Second Circuit reversed his conviction and sent it back with an order for the lower court to acquit him and be done with this. That's an applause line right there. That is absolutely an applause line. Mackey also posted on X, now we sue. So, yeah, and he, you know what? He should. But so I'm going to dig into some other stories here in a minute, but I had to start off with that one because that's the justice system being told, get your affairs in order. This was wrong. For the 3-judge panel to send it, I mean, it's one thing to reverse on a technicality or to remand with instructions to do something different next time. This was just a direction to enter a judgment of acquittal. That's a huge deal. That's a major win.
You know, I was kind of having deja vu a little bit too, because that's almost identical to the story of what happened to our friend Dale years ago, where he had a meme about Democrats voting early or something. He was facing like 30 years. Do you remember that story?
I did not. Dale Jackson?
Oh, yeah, he's told it many times.
Okay, tell me.
Yeah. But I'm probably messing up a little bit, but the gist is it's a lot like that. He put up a meme. This was like in 2009 or something, I think, where he put up something on Democrats voting early. Democrats vote on, Wednesday, a day before, something like that. And he was facing like 30 years for election, something. But it was obviously a political witch hunt, he claims, and that him and the Huntsville attorney, that they had some political beef. Anyways, but it was pretty identical to that, where it was like just a complete, it's like, why do they, it's like that in particular is something they latch onto and try to put you under the jail for making a joke about voting early. Democrats vote early, like vote on Tuesday, when it's, it's like, it's funny, but I'm glad that he was able to get justice.
Well, he's been dealing with it for years too.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine sitting around wondering if you're going to have to spend all that time in jail for putting a meme on your social media page? Have you seen how many memes and things get said by liberals that are designed to like incite violence and, help promote, pro-abortion issues or call people out, dox people? I mean, for the love of God. And then he's going to get 7 months, faced 10 years. He had the potential of facing a 10-year sentence for putting up a meme that was a joke.
Yeah.
Just gross.
We got a text. Bama Grant says that Dale got in trouble because he used the seal of the Alabama secretary on whatever meme he put up. So that
does feel familiar.
Yeah.
Oh, Dale. Is that the one you just read at the top of the string there?
Yeah.
You got anything on YouTube before we go to the break? Anybody else?
We got just people checking in. John said happy Thankful Thursday. David from Bucky says happy Thursday. And then we got Mike from Harvest on the Rumble. The wardrobe commentator says no tie. No tie. Phil isn't working hard enough today.
Oh,
Harvest says.
Oh, is that the way it works? You have to wear a tie to work hard?
I guess.
Maybe I'm just dressed for radio today.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, take me to a break, JP. We'll take that break. We'll come right back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. So you have some that are there and they're not there the next day.
Oh, you lose people in assessment. You lose people in all phases of Green Platoon. And then you lose some people once they get to the unit because either the deployment schedule is too much for them or they just aren't performing the way you thought they were going to perform, even though they got through all that. When the rubber actually meets the road, sometimes it doesn't work out.
Was it of any benefit to you at all that you had your Spanish language skills that were already there? I mean,
no, probably
in some special
not.
Operations, they want a language skill to be attached to it, but is that necessary at all in aviation?
No, not really. Right. No, I think in that case, it probably didn't help me a whole lot. I mean, the more you know about the more things, it's obviously going to help you in life, but I can't think of a specific example where that helped me out.
So you guys, you said you had some flying with nods and night vision ahead of your time going to Green Platoon and getting into the 160th. But But you guys fly with it a lot when you're in the 160th, right? Is that one of the things that differentiates the 160th capabilities, aside from the airframe having some other capabilities too? But is flying with nods a big part of what y'all do?
Yeah, certainly at the time. I would say now there's maybe the focus is broader. I mean, across the entire military.
Yeah.
But the unit was pioneers in night vision goggle flight. I mean, our guys were the ones that came up with the idea. When I went through flight school, we actually flew with what are called full face goggles, meaning they have a frame around them where you cannot see anything other than what you see through the tubes. And we did flights during the daytime with filters on the ends of the tubes where the instructor can see, but you can't, because obviously that's the safest way to learn how to fly night vision goggles. But it's really difficult for the person actually flying under those conditions. I think I was actually the last class to ever fly full face goggles and do day filters. I'm not sure, but we made a transition right around that time. But it was guys at the unit who said, "This is stupid. Cut the frame off," right? Because they're originally made for ground use, not air use.
Yeah.
So they cut the frame off and they made them flip up, and there's been evolution after evolution.
They got the big cushion pad around.
Yeah,
and they're like,
the full
like
face
big.
ones. Yeah. They didn't last very long, but that's where it started. Until somebody said, "No, we need to change this," and then they came up with ideas like finger lights and lip lights and infrared lasers and infrared tracers and all these things that you can see with night vision goggles that you can't see with the unaided eye. All were, basically came from that early.
So how much of that training is done by simulators now? Do they do that?
A lot.
Simulation?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
Simulators are really good. It was actually part of what I did after,
At Pinnacle?
I transitioned out, was working that field. And it's a tremendous cost saver in safety. You can do things in a simulator that are sometimes impossible to do in the aircraft, but certainly safer to do in a simulator. And you do it cost effectively, because a lot of what's going on in the aircraft today that are advanced is mission management. It's not so much moving the sticks around, it's pushing buttons and understanding how to use the integrated avionics. And you don't need to learn how to do that in a, aircraft that costs whatever, $10,000 an hour to fly. Now, I'm not saying you don't need stick time. Okay, that's the trap that some bean counters tend to fall into. That
There's always that seat of the pants feel that
yes,
changes things.
and actually the Army has come to realize that the aircraft they've been using for primary flight training at Fort Rucker now probably isn't the best, because you're not doing enough actual stick flying. There's a lot of automated systems on board that help the aircraft, or help you as a pilot, that you're losing that real ability to fly manually.
Yeah.
And they just did a pilot program where they're going to probably change how flight school is done, because there's been a realization that we got people that don't know how to fly a helicopter. I mean, they can mission manage all day long, but if they have to actually fly a bird, they're not as good as we used to be, unfortunately.
So let me ask you this: what now? The 160th, y'all are balls out a lot. So when you're flying, some of the stuff you're doing are not the things you would do or even be allowed to do in a conventional unit. But then you're also, like you said, you were back in the days when things were being pioneered. And I swear, I think it was you told me one time about strapping a Gatling gun or something to the front of one of the birds just to try it out to see if it would work. And it didn't work very well.
Am
I right in remembering that?
Yeah, I was part of the group that created the Arm Blackhawk.
Okay.
And it's still the only place that it's used is at the 160.
All right.
And yeah, we were running with scissors. I mean, we put a 50 cal, and these things are being mounted just on what was originally intended to be a door gunner pintle mount. So it's not really structurally designed to hold, a fixed forward weapon, but we modified it to where it could.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. All right. By the way, somebody sent you the article on Dale a minute ago. I forgot about the story.
We're getting lots of texts about this, but yeah, we got to text in people sending in articles from it. This one's from WAFF, says investigators with Department of Justice start laughing at radio talk show host prank. Says Dale Jackson, WVNN Huntsville drafted a fake news release online before Tuesday's election saying that Republicans were supposed to vote Tuesday, Democrats would vote on Wednesday, and said he could face felony charges for using the official secretary's seal. Yeah, but
what year was that? What
2009.
2009.
Mm-hmm. It's
Wait, so the Attorney General's office came after him?
Yep, the State Attorney General Troy King.
That's gonna be Troy King. Yeah,
Troy King and the ADOJ went after him.
Troy King, who never met a gambling hall he didn't like.
Yeah, and I know Dale has his own theories on why Troy King went after him, but
yes,
I
understand he does.
It's funny.
That's crazy. Stephen from Athens is checking in about that. He says Dale was suspended by Cumulus from WVNN for that reason. Wow.
Mo Brooks, I think, actually defended Dale in that. So
did he really?
Yeah,
that's cool. John from Lexington, South Carolina says the gentleman with the Hillary meme has 1.5 million in legal fees. The process was the punishment. I would agree with that. I think he should sue for the very reason you just described, because he just had his life upended for years for posting a meme. And it wasn't like the meme called on people to riot. And by the way, what they can't prove, and what's amazing to me that they follow through, what they cannot prove is that anyone had their vote, discounted, like negated by him putting up that meme. If he had done that and they had shown that the polls were like devastatingly small and that it impacted the election and they could prove it, then okay, but they can't. Dana from Athens says, and yet Kathy Griffin got away with the meme of her holding the decapitated head of our president. This is true. She was pretty gross, and she did. Lynn from Knoxville, Tennessee says he reposted the meme. He didn't create it. Wait, who? Wait, the man or Dale?
Whoever the recent story was. What was his name again? Rich.
The guy with the yeah. Okay.
The recent story. Yeah,
I've got it right here. I've forgotten his name already. Darn it, my bad. His name was Douglas Mackey.
Yep.
And then John C. from Madison said, I remember when that happened to Dale. He said that conservatives vote on, there it is, on Tuesday, liberals vote on Wednesday. Liberals got crazy stupid. He said, I did a radio show for an hour one time at a different radio station. I told people that was going to vote early and vote often, and that went well from the listeners. All right, but on the accountability issue, that's part about the Dipper is called Accountability at Last. Here's one for you. The Secret Service has just suspended 6 agents because of the Trump shooting in Butler, Pennsylvania. So the anniversary of that, by the way, is coming up here in the next few days. But townhall.com has the piece. I hold it right here in my calloused former paratrooper hands. Says there's finally been some accountability regarding the Secret Service's shambolic response to shambolic. Can I use that word? Shambolic.
I don't even know what that means, but
it means like really bad. It's a sham.
Oh, shambolic. Okay. I see. No, yeah.
The Secret Service's shambolic response to the assassination attempt on President Donald Trump. Inexcusable security breaches allowed a shooter named Matthew Crooks to fire multiple times at the main podium from less than 400 yards away. The Secret Service Director, Kimberly Cheadle, was forced to resign. And now, as of yesterday, apparently, 6 Secret Service agents have been suspended because of their response in the incident. Now, I don't know if they were the ones who didn't properly vet the area, or if they were the ones who were on the scene and didn't respond quick enough when the shots rang out. But it says an independent review by the Department of Homeland Security showed a series of law enforcement breakdowns had created an environment that left Trump vulnerable to the would-be assassin. So accountability at last, we'll see. Right now, it's only a suspension. I suspect that means they're suspended without pay pending further review or some type of administrative hearing. But I really do believe there were some major gaffes in security protocols. I mean, think about it. How does the guy get on the roof? Nobody sees him. Nobody pays attention. And then he gets off several shots while there's a sniper looking in his general direction. Come on, people. So the bottom line, though, is accountability at last. It would appear so, as 6 Secret Service agents have just been suspended for whatever role they played in the entire debacle in which President Trump's ear was shot and fireman Comparatori was killed and another one wounded. It's just wrong. It's just awful. And I'm glad to see somebody's being called on the carpet. Well, I'll tell you who else is being called on the carpet. And we may not get into this one in great detail before the break. Remember Russia? Russia,
How could I forget?
By the way, you know what that's from, right? Russia. You've never seen the Brady Bunch reruns?
No.
Brady Bunch? Marsha.
No, I cannot say I have.
Middle sister jealous of older sister whose name was Marcia. She was so pretty. She always was, popular at school, and she was tired of it. And middle sister was just going, "It's always Marcia." So that's like
see.
It's a thing, man. It's a pop culture thing.
I did not know that till now.
That's why we have Russia. All right, now you understand the background.
Yes, now I understand. Yeah.
Thank you. You were more informed. Former CIA Director John Brennan and former FBI Director James Comey are now under criminal investigation for potential wrongdoing related to the Trump-Russia probe. Y'all, this is way overdue. This was such an abusive process, such a bungling of the issues, such a ham-handed way of handling something that was extremely important. And they subjected it to any number of things that were purely subjective on their part as opposed to being real intelligence, not the least of which was what became known as the Steele dossier. So the Steele dossier, what is that? Well, the Steele dossier was an anti-Trump document that was allegedly put together to expose Trump during the 2016 election and talk about all the things he'd done that everybody needs to know about, which was just awful. The things that were said in that document. It was put together by a group called Fusion GPS. Some of y'all are having PTSD or renaming all this again. But Fusion GPS was the company that was hired by the Democrat presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. So Fusion GPS is the one that put together this fake dossier of all kinds of salacious allegations about things that they had dug up in opposition against Donald Trump. Well, it was a fake. It's been debunked in a big way, but not until damage was done. The Steele dossier became the foundation for multiple FISA warrant requests by John Brennan. It became the calling card for Democrats everywhere as they wanted to use it as proof that Trump's unfit for office. Well, now we got all of a sudden John Brennan and James Comey up for investigation. I'll tell you more when we get back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
And I mean, we
a little
had
duct tape, a little zip tie.
Oh, plenty of duct tape. Yeah, even coat hangers. I mean, you name it, whatever it took. But it was an amazing time to be there because you could go from sitting in the team room saying, "Man, it would be cool if we could do this," to convincing the leadership that there's some risk here, but we think we can mitigate it. Let's go try it. To then, that worked, writing a requirement and actually getting it turned into something that is fielded and then go shoot it in combat. I mean, there's probably nowhere else in the world you could say that. And I experienced that on more than one occasion.
So what was the craziest thing you can remember y'all did and thought, man, we're never going to do that again? The one that you sit around at 160th reunions going, remember that time?
Yeah. Well, one of the most amazing stories, and I've told it many times. I like to joke that I shot myself down 5 times. And the most dramatic one, and none of it my fault, but the most dramatic one. So back to this pintle mount with a minigun on it. So a minigun is a 7.62 Gatling gun,
right.
6-barrel. It'll shoot 6,000 rounds a minute at high rate. Okay, that is incredible. When people see video, like if you go online, you Google minigun, night firing, keep in mind all those tracers you're seeing, that's every 14th round. Okay, every 15th round. It's 14-to-1 tracer mix usually. So even though it's a steady stream of tracers, there's 14 more rounds in between each one of those you're not seeing. That's how many rounds are going downrange. So we got one on each side. And the way that we fixed forward mounted them is we put this, we called it a diaper pin. It was a pin that went through the pivot, which, because, if it's a door gunner, they're going to want to be able to pivot it, right?
Right.
We have to fix that. So we put a brace to hold it vertically, and then we put this pin through the shaft it's rotating on to hold it horizontally. and then it's a diaper pin because it goes around and it has a hook on the end that connects on the end. Right?
Okay, all right.
Which sounds like that should be sufficient. Well, it is until it isn't. And I'm flying with Donovan Briley, who's a really good friend of mine, lost in Somalia, actually, first aircraft shot down. We're flying. He's in the right seat. I'm in the left, night vision goggles. We're going in a range at Fort Knox, live fire, no dry run. We got approval to, usually have to make a dry pass to make sure there's nobody out there, but we got approval to go in hot. So we roll in. I'm flying. I pull the trigger, and the tracers are crossing in front of the nose. And so I let off.
That's bad, by the way.
Yeah, I let off
Don't
on the
cross
trigger.
the streams.
And I said, that is the worst expletive bore sight job I have ever seen in my life. So a bore sight is when you
Right.
orient the weapons to where they're going to impact where the sight is pointing, right? And Donovan, in classic Donovan style, says, Mike, I think we got a problem. So I look over, and I mentioned the finger lights earlier. Finger light is just a little battery-operated LED that is infrared, so you can't see it unless you're wearing goggles. We have some that you can see. This one you could see. And he turns on his finger light, and he points to the windshield. His minigun, that diaper pin can't come out while we were flying to Fort Knox. And when I pulled the trigger, the barrel rotation caused the gun to go left. You would think the wind would cause it to go right, but the barrel rotation caused it to go
A lot of
left.
force.
And it shot through the cockpit. It missed his knee by like 3 inches. He's got 7.62 rounds all through the cockpit. The windshield's blown out. Glass has been, because I felt something in my eyes, and it turned out it was glass shards from the rounds going through the cockpit.
Almighty, Mike.
And again, luckily, it hit. He had a armor panel on the side here, and the barrels hit the front of the armor panel, I think, but it stopped them from going any further, or it would come right through the cockpit and kill us both. And anyway, we landed, and what I like to say about this story is, this is back when it seemed like we had a little bit of authority to do things that maybe you'd get crushed for today. So I'm thinking about, okay, nowhere in the manual does it say I can't have holes in the windshield to fly this bird. So we put duct tape, back to the duct tape, over the holes in the windshield, cranked it up, and flew it back to Fort Campbell.
No,
Today, that would probably get you a little
with your
bit
finger
higher.
off the trigger the whole time.
We emptied the rounds out of the weapons. But that's probably the most dramatic thing that ever happened non-combat.
Yeah.
That I can come up with. And then there were 4 more of those that are less exciting. But
No, that's well, yeah, that's definitely one of those you swap over a beer and like, oh, no, let me talk the time we shot ourselves down.
Yeah.
That's
so they don't use the diaper pins anymore, by the way.
all right. So op tempo for you, you're in the 160th. Operational tempo is higher than the average unit, I would imagine, but it's a lot of come and go. What's the op tempo like in the 160th?
Nonstop.
Yeah.
Again, I was out when 9/11 occurred. I'd retired 6 months prior.
Really?
Made me feel like I was sitting on the bench and considered what I could do to get back in. But with my injuries from Somalia, I couldn't fly operationally anymore. But the reason I bring that up is just to put this in perspective. The rotation for our guys during the War on Terror was 90 days on, 90 days off. So you're in theater 90 days, either Iraq or Afghanistan, you're back for 90, then back in. There are guys who did 30 rotations, 30 in combat. And when I say combat, I mean combat.
Yeah.
They're hitting multiple targets every night. And there's just no op tempo that's more demanding than that I know of.
That's every one of the airframes.
Yes.
Chinooks, Blackhawks.
Yeah,
Warbirds,
the
whole
Chinooks were the stars of Afghanistan, actually, because of
amazing
the
stuff,
elevation,
Yeah.
which was a real struggle for the Little Birds and even the Blackhawks. But Iraq was pretty much more a Black Hawk Little Bird show.
Yeah.
With certainly a lot of Chinook missions as well. But yeah, all the platforms.
Yeah, I was in my tour in Afghanistan was the beginning of the war, riding horses and stuff. But we were in the northern parts, north of the Hindu Kush, and so both Bagram and Kandahar are down south, couldn't get to us by rotary wing because getting over the top of the Hindu Kush was too much for most of the airframes they flew.
Yep.
And the only couple of times something happened where somebody came in from the south, I think they were flying Chinooks.
Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it's a beast. I mean, it really is. There's some.
It's a freaking school bus with rotors on top.
Yeah, we call it a dump truck, but I love it. Yeah, it's a great aircraft.
But I've seen images of, I mean, some of those guys that fly in the Chinooks. It's amazing. They can balance on a dime. But they literally, one guy was with the ramp down in the back was hovering in the air, exiting troop shoes. And like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 2. Hour number 2, I say to you, here on a Thankful Thursday. You know what? I need to hear Thankful Thursday again. Let's play it. Do it.
You got to be more thankful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. You're a gentleman and a scholar.
We thank you so much for this bountiful harvest of Domino's, KFC, and always delicious Taco Bell.
Have you said thank you once?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, JP, for playing Thank You.
No, thank you.
Oh, absolutely. So I had this thing going right before the break talking about Comey and Brennan. Now, I will tell you that John Brennan always looks like the old man yelling at kids to get off his grass. I don't care what's going on. It could be opening Christmas presents. He still looks like an angry old man. Comey has always struck me as being a little bit sleazy, a little bit smooth, a little bit like got that kind of passive, what's wrong face when you know for a fact everything's wrong.
Like Gavin Newsom's distant cousin.
Oh, yeah. Wow. That was brutal. But then, Brennan has always looked like the angry man who's ready to go out there and just kick someone right in the teeth. So, piece here on Fox News. Talk about accountability at last. Is it? I mean, there's no full accountability yet, but I will say this. They're being investigated and they're worried about it. Former CIA Director John Brennan and former FBI Director James Comey are under a criminal investigation for potential wrongdoing related to the Trump-Russia probe. So here's what happened. So CIA Director John Ratcliffe, all right? Ratcliffe, who used to be the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, he's now the CIA Director. He referred this to the FBI. Why? Because Brennan used to be the CIA Director. And Ratcliffe, going through the files, found evidence of things that Brennan did that he had testified just the opposite in front of Congress. So at some point, I remember Brennan testifying for Congress, and he flat out lied, apparently, about whether or not, the Steele dossier was relied upon and whether he had any personal interaction with making sure that it was considered part of the overall file that was, part of the FISA warrants and all the things that they did to investigate Trump and try to derail his candidacy. Well, Brennan testified one way in front of Congress, but the documents that were found at CIA indicate quite the opposite. So Brennan is now being investigated for making false statements to Congress and participating in the effort to impact the election with the Steele dossier. As for Comey was over at FBI. Comey, sources told Fox apparently that an investigation into Comey is currently underway. They don't say all the details, but the indications are that there was some form of conspiracy between the two. Interesting. We shall wait and see. But let's not forget, though, the push for the Steele dossier to be included in what became known as the Intelligence Committee Assessment, I believe it is, the ICA. It resulted in all kinds of just extremely, I used the word salacious a while ago, but there's no better word, really. It's salacious, kind of gross things to be said about President Trump as if they were true and they had all been concocted. It's already been debunked. The testimony's been provided. It was all concocted. And oh, by the way, who paid for that? Do you recall who paid for that? Do you? The Hillary Clinton campaign paid for it. The Hillary Clinton campaign hired a group called Fusion GPS, paid for it, along with the DNC paying for it. That document that was paid for by the political opposition, which was fake, was relied upon by the CIA director who should have known better and then lied to Congress later saying that he didn't. George Papadopoulos, remember him? So George Papadopoulos, who was a campaign staffer that was targeted by the FBI's probe of the campaign or the Russia campaign, said he thinks the Justice Department has an airtight case or they would not have announced this. Very likely. He says, I'm under the working assumption that for such a massive headline to emerge that the DOJ must have an airtight case against both these people. That meaning Comey and Brennan. So I believe the reason the president has had numerous, numerous discussions with people like the Prime Minister of Italy, Prime Ministers of Israel and Great Britain is not simply due to economic policies. He thinks that they're trading information back and forth. What did you know? Did you see something too? Did they ever say it to you? Well, anyway, the bottom line is justice, we'll see. Right now, at the very least, there may be somebody called in for accountability. Brennan and Comey. How about this? While we're dealing with accountability, let's bring it down another notch. I am sick to death, just worn out with it, with liberals thinking it's okay to impede law enforcement. The videos are out there today. You can go to Fox News right now and look at one as they basically are fighting with ICE in the streets as ICE is doing a roundup. Headline, top one right now, video of all these masked crusaders fighting with police officers, says violent mob swarms ICE agents to block migrant arrests in Democrat-led cities. It's getting beyond just scuffling and yelling and trying to impede progress. Got a story here from Red State. Red State, the vice chair of a group called La Raza Unida was arrested for tire spiking Border Patrol vehicles in California. They put together these like booby trap things. There were boards filled with nails that were designed to stop basically Border Patrol vehicles from being able to get by. Improvised tire spikes, it says, in an attempt to disable federal law enforcement vehicles and obstruct immigration law enforcement operations in Van Nuys, California. Well, one of the men has already been arrested. Ernesto Ayala has already been arrested, and he is part of a political party known as La Raza. Oh, great. He runs for office and things. But here's the other piece. They're wondering now if this group, CHIRLA, that I've talked about on the show before, is involved. CHIRLA, the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights in Los Angeles. CHIRLA, that got 34 million taxpayer dollars to fund their operations to help illegal immigrants. And they're using it to help organize protests now. 34 million taxpayer dollars being used then to impede what taxpayers wanted, which is immigration cleanup on aisle 1. Thank you very much. All right, now I'm not sure how to take this. Weigh in here, if you will, JP. Biden's doctor, former White House physician Kevin O'Connor, just pled the Fifth. Okay, lawyer Phil for a minute. For all y'all out there, there's a thing called attorney-client privilege. There's what's called spousal privilege, where a wife or a husband can't be called upon to testify against their wife or spouse. And then there's another one that's very common called doctor-patient privilege. What you tell your doctor, what your doctor tells you, is deemed privileged and cannot be revealed. Okay, one would expect that. There's an exception. If you are subpoenaed before a court or a tribunal required to give testimony, you may indeed, you can argue it, but you may indeed have to give up the information being sought, even though it otherwise be protected by privilege. He didn't just claim privilege. He invoked the Fifth Amendment. Mm-hmm. Your thoughts on that?
It's clear that he's guilty of either knowingly, not acknowledging Biden's cognitive decline. And I mean, bottom line is he knows he's going to get in trouble if he actually tells the truth. I mean, there's no way around that. Like, there's no other way to tell the Fifth or plead the Fifth than that. And I have to admit, like, deep down, there is a little bit of like, what's this guy going to tell us that we already, oh, wait, you're telling me that Biden was cognitively in decline and we need his doctor to tell us? So there's part of me that's like that. But then the other part is like, okay, well, you pleading the Fifth just reeks of guilt, in my opinion, even though it's supposed to do like the opposite. Like that's what it does. So
I can see where he might go and say, Congressman Comer, Representative Comer, I cannot answer that on the basis of medical privilege. And he did invoke that. He did. But to plead the Fifth, well, the Fifth Amendment is your right not to testify in the event that it might incriminate you in a criminal act. As far as I recall, the privilege protections of doctor-patient confidentiality is not a criminal, it's a civil matter. I could be wrong. Somebody out there knows different, but I think that's a civil matter. So by invoking privilege, but then pleading the fifth, it's as if he said there's both criminal and civil liability here, and I don't want to talk.
Well, and I think he was told by former Biden administrators, probably because they know that if he actually said anything, that it would open Pandora's box, because now Congress could say, oh, wait a second. So he wasn't. So now let's go look at the auto pen and who used the pardons. Are the pardons valid? Who had access to the auto pen? And that just starts a whole door, and they know that's trouble for them. So they're not even going to let it start.
I tell you what else he may get into. He may also get into who did you tell?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if it's spousal, if it's patient privilege, but did you tell the first lady? And did the first lady then go out and tell the world he's fine?
Mm-hmm.
Look at him; he's as sharp as a tack.
Yeah.
Or did you, by the way, did you ever see the first lady intervene in a way that made you believe that she was taking care of the essential functions of life and daily living, or for that matter, the presidential office? I mean, there's no telling what he saw, because I can imagine that when the doc saw the president, that the first lady may have been there.
Yeah. Or he was coerced from somebody to not put in writing that he's in decline. Like, oh, well, the doctor sees in decline and Joe Biden's like, no, he's fine. Yeah, you're going to say he's fine, because if you don't, then you're going to get in trouble, So,
yeah. Well, I got a piece here from Newsweek. Newsweek says, why does this matter? House Republicans led by Representative James Comer subpoenaed O'Connor in June, ordered him to testify as part of the investigation into Joe Biden's cognitive decline. And we're going to look now and find out whether or not this means that there was, in fact, a cover-up, because the cover-up would, in fact, be a crime. The cover-up would be the abuse of the office of the presidency. The cover-up would have been lying to the American public. The cover-up would have been usurping the authorities of the office of the presidency to do things that you didn't have the authority to do, to include maybe even pardoning people with the auto pen, to include making foreign policy decisions or intervening in something that you weren't the elected official to do that for. All said and done, this is going to go for a while longer. I just hope they continue to bird dog it and don't get tired of it and just let it go. But yeah, in terms of accountability at last, I'm glad somebody is being asked an official question before an official body, subject to a subpoena and sanctions if they don't appear, to finally ask the questions, answer the questions. What did you know about his cognitive decline? And they pled the fifth, which kind of makes the mystery even deeper, right? All right, take me to a break, JP. We'll take that break. We'll come right back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, just plain right. We'll be right back. To a mud hut on the edge of a cliff.
Yeah, there's a famous picture from Afghanistan. That's probably it.
Yeah.
The front wheels are off in space, with hundreds of feet below. Yeah.
So you had some major deployments. Operation Prime Chance, which a lot of folks don't realize, is defending tankers that were flagged American and making sure they're safe.
Our friends, the Iranians, who
they're in the news again.
They've I don't even know what to say about them. It's just they've been a constant problem for 50 years, and it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, because the Israelis are just to the point where they had to do something, and they did.
Yeah, and I think most of the world is glad they did. At the same time, holding their breath that they did.
Right.
But Operation Just Cause. So you're back in Panama again, and you went in with the 160th on that too, right?
Right. We did. We were there for 8 hours. So when the F-117 dropped the first bomb ever at Rio Hato, I was down there underneath watching it. It was pretty amazing.
Flying over places you've been to in the past, right?
Yeah. Some of the subsequent missions, there's where I used to live, and we're putting SEAL Team 6 in on targets around the city, trying to find, because Noriega was still on the run at the time. That our mission was to capture him. That was it.
Yeah.
And we called it the hunt for Elvis, because there was always an Elvis sighting somewhere, and usually it was bogus, but if it met the intel criteria, we'd go. And so we were flying all over the place.
And then Desert Storm also. Mm-hmm. Also with 160th, obviously all your deployments are with 160th, but What was the mission in Desert Storm? Was it scud hunting or what?
It was, yeah. So the Scuds, for those who don't recall, the concern was Saddam was launching Scuds into Israel,
Right.
which potentially would draw Israel into the fight, which would break up our coalition, because our coalition had Arab countries along with Western countries as part of a unified force. But if the Israelis got involved, the concern was that would fall apart. So it was a huge issue to stop Saddam Hussein from firing Scuds into Israel. So we were putting Delta Force on the ground in Western Iraq to try to find these launchers. And then we actually found some ourselves. And I was fortunate enough to put the first rounds on one.
Did you really?
I did, yeah.
With an armed Black Hawk?
With an armed Black Hawk.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Take it out?
So in the end, they think it was a decoy. But there's a photo of it in this. I don't know if you've ever seen these books. Like there's an Army one, a Navy one, Air Force. There's a SOCOM book. They're big format, like coffee table books. Yeah. In that book for SOCOM, there's a picture of my FLIR. If you look at that picture, I don't care who you are, you're not going to think that's a decoy. I mean, so FLIR is forward-looking infrared. For those who don't know what that acronym is, it's heat sensitive, basically. You can see heat on the wheels. I mean, it looks real. I mean, this thing absolutely looks real. And then you can see the minigun rounds sort of hitting on the way up into but it didn't blow up. And we had a Scud expert back at the operations center when we got back, and he said, "You're really lucky it didn't blow up, because if it blows up, it's like the space shuttle going off, because there's so much propellant in there."
Oh, wow.
And we were pretty close. We were probably within 200 meters when we broke.
Oh, wow.
Break meaning you're diving, you're shooting, and then you break. And he said if you would have blown it up, it probably would have taken you out. So, okay. Glad it
take
didn't
that
blow
all
up.
day long.
Yeah.
You still get credit though, right?
I guess so. Yeah.
And then there's Operation Gothic Serpent, which is heading into Somalia. Became known as the Battle of Mogadishu. A lot of your book, of course, and rightfully so, is focused on that mission. I want to dive into that for a bit, because that's the one. I mean, your situation in the Battle of Mogadishu took you out of running in obscurity in terms of your personal name, and thrust you into the eyes of the entire world. And I remember that. I remember when that happened. It was amazing to see it. But for those who don't recall, Operation Gothic Serpent, the intro into Mogadishu for the United States actually started under George H.W. Bush.
Correct.
But it transitioned in early '93 when Clinton took office.
Correct.
So you were there during Clinton's era, correct?
Yes.
All right. So Clinton took office in January '93. Task Force Ranger is the name of the U.S. presence, I guess, at the airfield there. And then in October, was it October 3rd, I think? October 3rd, '93, launched what many people just refer to as Black Hawk Down, because and we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. Let me get some text messages and get caught up on some of y'all's input. If you want to text in, you still can. 833-68-RIGHT. That's 833-687-4448. Ron from Tuscumbia said, I'm assuming about the doctor. He said, if he's offered immunity or a pardon, does he have to give testimony? Well, I mean, that would be a negotiated issue. So if he's offered immunity in return for his testimony, then there would actually be a written contract, an agreement that says, yes, in return for providing me immunity, I will tell you more things. He still may be subject to questions of privilege. So they may have to wind up having a judge get involved to order whether or not he's required to testify. Right now, you've got Congress has subpoena power, and Congress has enforcement capability of the subpoena power. He did appear for the subpoena, but they can't make him say what he believes his Fifth Amendment rights would, be flagged for. So It's a tough nut, but it sure does reek. It does. What?
Well, he didn't plead the fifth on everything. He didn't plead the fifth on his name.
Oh, there you go.
That was it. I think he.
So he got through that part.
He's I think that was the only thing he did not plead the fifth on. Was his name?
Wow.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Had to have been a pretty short interview.
Yeah.
Paul from Huntsville says, Phil, Biden's DOJ disallowed attorney-client privilege for Donald J. Trump. Did they? I'm looking back on that. But I would suspect you're right. This is in front of Congress, though. Different levels of rules. I don't know the detail. That's why I said a moment ago, a judge may have to get involved. Connor from Huntsville again says there's a Democrat weasel, but I repeat myself, lawyer named Mark Elias. He worked for Fusion GPS. Yep. Had his hands in all the Steele dossier. There is nobody I want to see in an orange jumpsuit more than this guy. He is also the major player behind all the lawfare against Trump and associates. Well, and there you have it. So then, what happens if they're going after Comey and Brennan? Does it have what I would call legs? Does it have second and third order effects they get into? Do they wind up making a deal with someone for their testimony, which leads to this over here, including that guy, Mark Elias? Scott from Somerville says, in Alabama, a person can be arrested for resisting arrest for themselves or someone else. It's a misdemeanor. However, hindering prosecution can be a felony. Okay. Thank you very much. Dana from Athens says that doctor could be pardoned, then he can't plead the fifth. Ooh. That would be interesting.
That is sort of I didn't realize that. It came up whenever all the Biden pardons were happening. Somebody mentioned how this actually would make it to where they can't plead the fifth. But that would be something. That would be a way that it could backfire if he was pardoned. But unfortunately, I don't think he is. And maybe intentionally because they know that.
I don't think anybody in the current administration is going to pardon him. So
that would be a hand to play. We're going to pardon you, so you can't plead the fifth.
Unless, I will say this, unless again a deal was struck, I want immunity. I want a pardon. In return, I'm going to tell you who did what with the auto pen. I'm going to tell you who told me not to talk. I'm going to tell you the threats they made to me with my license being lost if I spoke up about how cognitively impaired he really was.
And I think that's a trade that the Trump administration should make if that were the case.
If that were the case, I'd make it in a heartbeat.
100%. Yes.
Absolutely in a heartbeat. And then at that point, it'd be game on, brother. Dave from Capshaw checking in, sends me a meme. What'd you send me, Dave? Oh, well, you're welcome. It's Bugs Bunny saying thank you. Okay. What's he thanking me for? I don't know.
Couldn't tell you.
I'm proud. Oh, it's Thankful Thursday.
Oh, well.
There you go. Brand spanking new in the text lines. Brian from Madison. Brian, we're glad. He said, if Epstein did nothing wrong, Alex Acosta deserves to be charged for lying under oath, saying he belonged with intelligence. I don't know what that means. He belonged. What's he trying to say?
He's in the. Did you hear that about the district attorney? Whenever Epstein got his soft ruling, he was apparently told by his superiors, according to him, that he was to back off because he belonged to intelligence. So,
yeah. Ooh, I'd forgotten that piece because there is speculation that one of the reasons why everything got real quiet all of a sudden about the Epstein files is the intelligence community might have been involved.
Yeah.
David at Bucky says, Phil, what are the odds Comey and Brennan plead the fifth? Well, it depends on how far we go with this. Matt from Madison, suspension. Wow, I guess Trump would have had to be killed to get terminated. Yeah, that is kind of crazy. It's suspension on the Secret Service as opposed to actually fired. But I'm assuming that means there's an administrative process they have to go through, like, they're unionized or something. All right, coming up next, Butters and Lee. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. Book in the movie. And I guess code word Irene was what launched the mission, right?
It was.
Which my secretary downstairs at the law firm, her name is Irene. I told her one day, I said, I don't know if you're aware of the use of your name in modern pop culture. And she went, I've never heard that. So anyway.
And actually, that's my character that says it in the movie.
That is your character. Yeah. And I want to talk about the movie and all that too at some point, just to get your thoughts on it. But Rangers have the mission of going in and securing some high-value targets, or securing the scene so that Delta can secure the high-value targets. You're part of the flight in. Who were you bringing in, by the way?
So I was the flight lead, which means I'm responsible for my whole flight of aircraft. of the Ranger blocking force. So it's basically split into two pieces. We had the assault force, which is where the Delta guys are. They're primarily on little birds. Yeah. And they're going to go in first because they want the element of surprise. They want to be, busting doors down before, with limited amount of time to react, right? If you put the blocking force in first, then you bring the assault force in, the bad guys have a little bit more time to react. So they're going in first. We're right behind them. So as soon as their birds pull out, we're moving in, and I had 4 Blackhawks that made up the blocking force, plus 2 spare attack little birds, plus the search and rescue bird. So we're all coming in together on the second wave, basically. And we just set up a box. I mean, all they want is put a Ranger platoon on each corner, and the purpose is twofold. One, keep more bad guys from getting in, and then obviously we call them leakers, keeping the people you're after from getting out. And that all went pretty smoothly, even though we'd done it 6 times before. This was the 7th mission.
Right.
And, we had tremendous success. We had captured, I think, 27 people on a list of 50, taken no casualties of any significance. We didn't lose any birds. I mean, it was all going pretty well. There were 3-day missions and 3-night missions leading up to that. And this 7th mission is a day mission, which created some risk factors that we knew about, but, not my call.
Part of the job.
But yeah, the commander makes the call.
Right.
They're within tolerance, I guess you could say, and when we go, and then all hell broke loose.
Yeah, it got crazy on the ground pretty quick, didn't it?
It did.
I know we had one Ranger injured on the fast rope end, and that created a scene. And then I guess the all call went out, and it seemed like everybody in Mogadishu had an AK-47, and they all ran to the scene.
And that was their strategy, which we found out later. They actually had set up a system where once they knew where we were hitting the target, and again, they learned this over time, right? When I talk about this, I try to compare it to sports, right? If you keep running the same play, the defense is going to adapt to that play, right? They understand, okay, this formation means this is what they're going to do, so here's how we counter that. It works the same way in the military. And so having done it 6 times, they obviously understood, okay, the helicopters will go to a target. That's where, they're going to put people on the ground. They're going to try to apprehend folks. If we can pin them in there, then, we might have some chance of
Plus, they were blocking roads, so the
Right.
ground convoy was
Absolutely.
having trouble.
Yep. So we found out after that was their strategy. Once they knew where the target was, they were all going to close on it, and it worked pretty well, actually.
Well, the Blackhawks stayed on station. In fact, one thing I've never known is what was the purpose of y'all? If there's going to be a ground convoy for the exfil, what was the purpose of y'all remaining on station like you did?
So we kept 2 attack little birds and 2 Blackhawks over the target for fire support. So
Okay.
the little birds, they've got miniguns and rockets,
Right.
and they're going to be slightly further out in terms of their restricted fire areas. Where the Blackhawks were being used, and honestly, hindsight being 2020, it wasn't a great way to do this, and it's not being done anymore, at least not in urban environments. They were being used for both.
Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Yes, man,
Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. This one, goes from like Huntsville back over to Chattanooga, and I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I'm talking about all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn, straight across the border, what we call once again Fort Benning. And then big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. And then all of y'all in the whole wide world going to the World Wide Web, watching us live stream the show on multiple platforms across the world. And then, oh, by the way, all of y'all that podcast it. What I'm saying is our audience is all over the place, a bunch of y'all. And we love you and we appreciate you. And thank you very much for being a part of what we do. All right. There are 2 people that do stuff with us on a regular basis and make us better because of what they do. And I'm thankful on Thankful Thursday to have them in the mix. So let me just check on things and make sure we are all together. So calling the roll right now from Huntsville, the dynamic diva of punditry, Lee from Huntsville. Are you there?
I'm here.
Yay. All right. And then more local and smooth and buttery, that'd be the Butterman. Butters, are you there?
I am here, sir.
Wow, we got some feedback on that one. Just generated some electricity in my ears. All right, I pronounce it. Hit me some whoop whoops. Butters and Lee. All right, you guys. First question. So let me ask you this. The teachers union. I went on a full hour-long rant yesterday about the teachers union. I got experience here. I was speaking from experience. Does it matter if Republicans are taking campaign donations for teachers unions to you? Tell me your thoughts on this. Lee, you first.
Yes, it matters. They hand out a lot of money, and a lot of these candidates expect it and need it. And, with that comes expectations. I'm sorry. There's no reason for AA to have the power in the state that they do, considering we're, I'm using air quotes, a red state, when you have that much influence. So yes, you're going to get what you pay for, and that means some of these people are going to vote for things they shouldn't.
Well, and okay, all right. Let me go to Butters first before I even say anything more. Butterman, what are you thinking?
Well, I mean, to me, it brings up an even bigger question on unions in general, particularly of government employees, which is really what teachers are.
Right.
You and I weren't allowed to unionize in the military for good reason. So what the heck? And then, specific to Alabama, I mean, they're not going to put money behind Democrats because they know they don't have a chance. So why Republicans would take money from them anyways, just to beat other Republicans? I mean, stay away from it. Put them in their place.
I think we have to call it out when we see it, because what's also interesting, you guys, and neither one of y'all mentioned it, so I'll just throw it in there. The Alabama Republican Party, as part of the party's platform, has a position statement that was voted on by the executive committee at the state level, asking for all Republican candidates to not take campaign donations from the teachers union, and yet a bunch of them do. I mean, go ahead.
Then
there's no teeth.
That seems like that's a good list of Lee said in quotes a red state. Perhaps those are quote Republicans that need to be looked at. Well,
they do, and one of them is sitting in my old seat at the State Senate District 10. State Senator Andrew Jones took like $25,000 from the teachers union. I was appalled by that. The teachers union did everything it could to get me unelected, failed, but nonetheless, I look at it and think, why would you? There's no need for this, and they're doing it because they just want the money. Lee, what you had again?
I said that here's the way I look at it. If you have no teeth to saying something like that, then it means nothing. It's just them being able to say, well, we voted on this, so what? Who cares? If you're not going to enforce anything, what they should do is say, if you go ahead.
No, I think you're talking about the Republican Party?
Yes.
Okay.
What I'm saying is they should tell someone, you can't run on the Republican ticket unless you refuse AA money. If they did that, you'd see a big difference. But they're not going to do that because everybody wants that money.
Well, it's not everybody. I'd say there's about a third of Republicans that are taking it, but there's a bunch. And I think part of this is because, and I said it yesterday on the show, I think there's a bunch of Republicans right now that don't have the battle scars from what it was like 15 years ago, when we literally were just getting bludgeoned every day by the teachers union, trying to dox our families, dox our jobs, threaten our supporters. I got threat mail, and I had to deal with it. I got threatening phone calls, and they were awful. In fact, I've said before, I use it very sparingly, but this was an evil organization, and yet there's now Republicans taking money from them. I got news. They're still an evil organization. They are no good for the state of education in the state of Alabama, or anywhere for that matter. All right, next question.
Well,
you go ahead.
I just finished that off with it. It sounds like, I mean, this and among other topics, Republicans need to take a good hard look at themselves and see what exactly does it mean to be an Alabama Republican. And I say that knowing Andrew Jones is a friend of mine. So,
Yep. All right. Next question. So we were talking to the show a few minutes ago, right before y'all came on. Joe Biden's doctor. Joe Biden's doctor got a subpoena, had to appear before Congress, tried to get it put off. He couldn't. So he did show up, but his doctor was being asked about any evidence of diminished capacity of Joe Biden while he treated him. And rather than just invoking privilege, he also invoked the Fifth Amendment right to not incriminate himself. Your thoughts on this? Does it matter? This time you first, Butters.
Well, I'll invoke the military question again. You and I are involved in something, conducting military operations, and there's an investigation. Are our medical records, is that a private thing? Is some military doctor going to sit there and say, no, I can't release that information? So the whole idea of doctor-patient confidentiality, I think, is completely off the table when you're talking about the president of the United States. I don't know exactly what the law is on that. I'll let you pontificate on that, but that just doesn't pass the sniff test to me. So, but pleading the fifth, you're guilty as well. You know what? So I think you're covering your rear, and it absolutely needs to be investigated, because we cannot. I mean, the very stability of our country depends on figuring this thing out. How did we get to this?
Lee, what do you think? Biden doctor pleading the fifth.
Can you not offer immunity or, I don't know, some sort of pardon? I don't know which would be more appropriate. That way they can't invoke the fifth. I mean, he could still probably invoke privilege at that point, but he's really then stretching it thin. Besides the fact that we all saw the diminished capacity, was he going to tell us that, something we don't already know? But my guess is either he has some form of dementia, or perhaps now that we've discovered he has cancer, and I think he had it all along, chemotherapy can take it out of older people. So maybe he was suffering side effects. Who knows? But I'm saying this information wasn't given to the American people, and this doctor needs to be wrung out until he admits the truth.
I completely agree with that, I think they can't let this go, because I'll be honest with you. Not only is it abuse of power and misuse of the office potentially, but there's also the lying, the trust, the faith in the office and the office holder. And then there's the need to make sure that people realize you can't ever do this again. All you deep staters and people who were in admin positions who thought it was okay to use the auto pen, guess what? We're saying no, and we're so serious about this, we're going to press forward. I think that's where we have to be on this, to make sure
100%.
the world sees it. Would you say?
And I mean, I'll go back to just the common sense, aviation background. When we have aviation mishaps, even civilian, they dig through everything. How much sleep did you get? What was going on with you? I mean, and they because you want to identify the issue. How did this happen? And we're talking about the leader of the free world. No, we have to understand how did this? Yes, because we all obviously saw it. Like, quit.
And he's not just your average person.
No,
he's not your average person. He's the leader of the free world, like you just said, and his health and welfare matters to everyone on planet. So I don't want to hear the BS.
All right, there you have it. We'll take a break. That's round one of Butters and Lee. We'll come right back. Round two is where we flip the script, and I just wait to see what questions they have for me. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned with Butters and Lee. We'll be right back.
Guns, which I don't think they used the miniguns a lot, but they had snipers on board. So it's a great stable platform for the shooter, but it's a 50-something foot long target for people on the ground that have weapons. Mm-hmm. And you can't fly fast, because if you're flying fast, your shooter can't hit anything. So the speed is less than what you would fly if you were, just trying to avoid fire. We're probably flying 50 knots, right? Which may seem fast to someone on the ground, but that's really slow for an aircraft. Mm-hmm. And it makes the aircraft much more vulnerable to ground fire.
And how far above ground were you?
Very low. I mean, the Blackhawks had to stay 150 feet and below.
Okay.
And the Little Birds, I think, were 300 feet and above, which worked out great. I mean, we'd done it I mean, at that point, probably 50 times counting rehearsals, and never had any close calls in terms of mid-airs.
Were you just flying racetracks?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we had, when I was in Baghdad in 2004, I can remember being on a cordon search mission in Sadr City area, and they had changed all the TTPs because the racetracks got predictable, apparently, for ground fire, and so they were flying figure eights, and they were also altitude changes, and they had gone through all kinds of machinations to try and make sure the bad guys on the ground didn't have a predictable means of assessing, where the flight was going to be.
Right. Now, my flight, because I'm not one of these 4 aircraft over the target. I've already gone in and I put my guys on the ground, but I took my flight north of the city for exactly what you're talking about. And one of the guys criticized me. He said, "Hey, we need to stay closer to the target so we can see what's going on." And I'm like, "No, we're a contingency force at this point. I'm going north of the city where there's no threat, because if we're just doing circles up there, why would I want to be right here in the middle of this fight and put our entire flight at risk?" And it was obviously the right decision to do what I decided to do. So I've got my flight and I'm north of the city. Now, north of the city is not a long distance. It's probably a mile.
Right.
And we're up there orbiting basically on standby. I mean, when you got assets like that, if you could keep them on hand as a ground force, keep them on hand, right? Because you never know when you might need some kind of helo support. And then I get called back in when the first Black Hawk gets shot down.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So you were flying what, Super 6-4?
Right.
And Super 6-1, your friend Donovan, right?
Right.
So he's the first one to go down.
And Cliff Walcott.
Yeah, and Cliff Walcott. And then you were, I think you were directed in to replace him.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, we didn't have a sniper on board. So we're going in simply to use our minigun down close to try to provide fire support for the guys on the ground. That's what our mission has now become, which that was not our mission prior to that. But again, you adapt and you do what needs to be done to try to help the force that you're supporting.
And you've got a full crew?
4, yeah. 2 crew chiefs and 2 pilots.
All right, so Super 6-1 is down. What do you remember about Super 6-1, hearing it over the air, and recognizing that one of them's already down?
Yeah, I mean, I've always called myself an eternal optimist. It never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that Cliff and Donovan would be dead. I just assumed that, they took a round, they're going down, they're going to land the aircraft somewhere, we'll get them recovered, and we'll all go debrief this thing when this is over. But obviously now we've lost a bird, which is the first time that this happens for us. There had been another Black Hawk shot down by 10th Mountain Division previously with some fatalities, but it wasn't our unit. And it, I've always used the phrase big sky, little bullet. You don't think it can necessarily happen to you until there's enough volume of fire where it's going to happen to you. And there's also a search and rescue bird shot down in the middle of all this that then heightens that even more, because now they've shot down 2 aircraft in about 5 minutes, and we're going into this fray. This is getting real, really fast. And, I remember telling the crew chiefs, because I've got control of their guns from up front. So I've got an arming switch. And I armed the guns, and I said, okay, you're armed, but we got friendlies all over the ground down here. So we can't go in here just blasting away. When we see bad guys, we got to get situationally aware so we know where all of our forces are before you start launching 6,000 rounds a minute downrange.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in an urban environment, I don't want to say it's impossible, but right on the rooftops, it's really difficult to sort all that out. Because first of all, they're all taking cover. So, they're not standing out there waving at you. They're all taking cover. So trying to figure out where everybody was would have probably taken us a while. In the end, we only made it around 3 times when we got nailed by an RPG.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just pulling pins on truth grenades. That's what we're doing. All right, we're going back to round 2 with Butters and Lee. I'm going to go ladies first. Lee, what you got for me?
Okay, so it seems like every single day another judge is overruling something of Trump's. Like I swear you can't go to the bathroom without them like overruling it. And my question for you is, how is this going to stop? And because it doesn't even seem like the Supreme Court can stop it. And what should they face any type of punishment for this?
Yes, and well, okay, several things. One, the one most recent today, and I've not had a chance to read the article. I've only scanned it. But my recollection of the one most recently about birthright citizenship is the one that probably sparked your attention here. Yeah, that one was actually certified as a class. So when the Supreme Court said like 2 weeks ago that Trump had a right to pursue executive policies without having to suffer national injunctions all the time. They also made an exception for that, unless the lower court takes the time to certify it as a class action lawsuit, which would mean that it has much broader, effect. And so in this particular case, what happened was that judge certified it as a class. But I think it was probably rushed. I think it was something that he did like almost out of hand. Certifying a class is supposed to be something that takes a lot more time, is a lot more difficult because it raises the bar for the amount of discovery and other things you have to go through. And yet suddenly this judge sees fit to go ahead and certify a class. Well, that gives him the ability then to allegedly put in place a nationwide injunction. We may very well see it go back to the Supreme Court right away. I don't know. But in this case, the Supremes have ruled, and that judge is sort of threading the needle on what he's allowed to do. Now, back to the other part of the question, though, is there any way to stop this? Is there any way to have like a penalty or something assessed to it? Yeah, there is. And judges can be disbarred. They can be debenched in a sense. They can be sanctioned. Every state and every federal system has its own version of judicial disciplinary action. And if there's a judge defying the Supreme Court, then they can absolutely be called on the carpet, and they can even lose their position on the bench. So it's possible, very possible.
Do you think there's a bar willing to do that, or any leadership that has the stomach to actually try to do that in any state?
Well, in the states, yeah. I mean, think about it. Roy Moore in Alabama lost his seat. He was removed from the state Supreme Court. So we've definitely got precedent for it. I know of another federal district court judge who was removed from the bench because of infidelities. So that happens. But now these judges with Trump right now, those are federal judges. So there's an entirely different system, and it's run, I believe, through the Office of Courts with the Supreme Court of the United States. And then every state on their state judges has its own version. In Alabama, we call it the JIC, the Judicial Inquiry Commission. And they handle the disciplinary actions on judges. So there you go.
Can I go one rabbit hole with you on that?
All right.
Is there anything that can disband some of these federal judge seats?
What are you saying?
Like, could you, as I understand it, some of the intent may have only been to really have a Supreme Court, and a lot of these federal judge seats that have been created through the years, going and reviewing whether they're actually necessarily required under things like the Constitution and the basic founding of our country.
They can.
Is that a thing?
Well, okay. So first of all, I think that each one of those federal judicial bench seats have actually been allocated by act of Congress. So I don't think they can just be undone. But in Alabama, I literally was there when we pursue the idea of setting up more judicial seats, because some of the courtrooms, like in Jefferson County, were getting very crowded, and we had to allocate more, judicial seats based on our constitutional provisions. So it can happen. I mean, there's a way to do it and to undo it. It just takes, I think, an act of Congress to get it done. Next question for me. What you got there, Butterman?
Well, so I don't know if you've heard about this Jeffrey Epstein guy. It's this dude that they've been talking about forever. This whole thing and the way it's been handled.
Yeah.
Are we losing credibility here with all of this? Like, what's the greater implication? I mean, whatever, we can get into the details of Epstein, but just the whole handling of this just seems like a giant fumble? And what should we be thinking about as we move forward with all of this?
Well, I think first of all, we should be thinking that the Attorney General probably should have hired a PR consultant to help with how to put this out, because gosh, it was not done well. I mean, and granted,
That's an understatement.
I think that I said this yesterday, one of the best responses that I've seen is Dan Bongino as the assistant director of the FBI. He said, because he was a pundit, he had his own radio show and all that. He said, I used to get paid to have opinions. Now I get paid to study facts. And I thought, well, that's a really good reply, except that we've been told by the administration members that the list was on her desk, that that they were going to be disclosing. They even called in, a bunch of influencers and gave them all their own notebook with things from the Epstein files at one point, but they all decided it was nothing burger stuff and they weren't pleased. I'm thinking, if you made this much out of it, then why did you come out now and say ain't nothing to see? They really could have done a little more to roll this out and say, we need to be honest with the public. Here's where we are. This is what we've got. I'm of the mind that there is more there, but there is some massive reason related to either the intelligence community or the involvement of some foreign head of state that could disrupt massive things on an internet.
All those things.
Or all of the above. Yeah. Something that could destabilize, peace in the Middle East because it turns out a member of the Saudi royal family was on the Epstein Island or something like that. Who knows? Anyway, yeah, go ahead.
What do you think the impact is going to be on the just the general MAGA support? Is this, is this going to be a bigger deal than Elon, starting a new party?
It will never truly go away. But it will be like that thing that's out there. I mean, once the economy goes up, people vote their wallets more than they vote that scandal that they wish they knew more about. It's going to be like JFK. Was there a guy on the grassy knoll? It's going to be that thing that sits out there, but it doesn't really rock people's world because eventually it becomes just that one more conspiracy theory that people always wonder what really happened. And there'll be people who have their own websites about it and the occasional documentary, but it's not going to wind up making an ardent member of the MAGA community suddenly vote Democrat. It's not going to happen.
No, but it's undermined trust, though. There's a lot of trust that's been lost over this.
I think that's true. I think that's absolutely true. I'm just saying what I think it is that trust will begin to fade as other things that were promised are coming true. It's just hard to swallow, and it just really wasn't handled really well. So there's that. All right, that was a good round, dudes. That was good. All right, I tell you what, how long we got there? About 10 seconds? All right, good enough. Appreciate you both, Butters and Lee, as always, every Thursday. Thank you much. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, taking a break. Come right back. Hour number 3. We'll be right back. Well, RPG to the tail rotor, right?
Right.
In the movie, and later I want to get your thoughts on the movie, like I said, but in the movie, there's a scene where you took the RPG to the tail rotor, but initially you thought it was going to be okay until you started getting some play in the pedals and stuff like that. So what were your first thoughts, and how did that I mean?
Well, I knew we were hit, and I always tell people if you want to know what it feels like, drive too fast in a parking lot and hit a speed bump. That's what it felt like. It felt like a jolt to the airframe. Because you don't see it. Usually what they were doing is they let us fly by, and then they emerge from the doorway and shoot. So you're probably not going to see the launch. The crew chief might see it, depending if they're looking in the right direction. And then the reason they hit both of us in the tail is they're not leading us enough. So that 50-knot magical speed was just ballistically perfect for them to shoot at I'm sure they're aiming for center mass.
Which the crazy thing is, an RPG is not usually designed to take out aircraft.
No, I mean, but if you fire enough of them, eventually, they say they fired 150 at us on that mission. Now, not just at me, but on that mission. That's how many RPGs.
I never heard that. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, they went all in. They thought, we want to bring down a helicopter, and they were successful. So anyway, back to your question. Initially, I feel like I hit a speed bump, knew we were hit. I can see the airfield. It's 2 miles ahead of us. And looking in the cockpit, everything's okay. Controls are all responding. But what had happened was the gearbox had been blown apart, and it's like a transmission in your car, right? If you blow your transmission apart,
you ain't go anywhere.
Not for very long.
Once those gears
run without oil for any period of time, they're going to self-destruct, and that's what happened. And then when the tail rotor left the aircraft, again, that's impossible to describe. If you haven't experienced it, I can't describe it. I mean, it's this violent spin of the aircraft, out of control.
What do they call that? Counter rotation or something, where you're trying to restore stability?
Well, the tail rotor is there to counter the torque of the main rotor system. Again, if you think about a drill, people are familiar with that. You pull the trigger, you can feel it want to turn. That's torque. So the same thing's happening to a helicopter, obviously with a lot more force. The tail rotor is mounted horizontally to push against that force that's wanting the airframe to spin. Once that tail rotor is gone, there's nothing. So essentially, if you were left unaffected by anything else, what would eventually happen is the airframe, minus wind drag, obviously, would be spinning as fast as the rotor blades are in the opposite direction. Yeah. That's essentially once it reached equilibrium. That will never happen, but that's how much force you're talking about here. And I remember looking at my feet, trying to convince myself, you're doing the right thing in terms of which pedal you're pushing, but it is having no effect on the aircraft. And then I'm like, okay, we lost the tail rotor. Again, this is something you can't train that. There's no, you can't do it in a simulator. I mean, we can do a loss of tail rotor in a simulator, but you can't do the violent effects, the physical violent effects of the airframe in a simulator. But I knew what had happened, and the only thing you can do is shut the engines off, because again, that's what's creating that torque. So if you can remove that force, it'll stop that spin, but now you have no engines. Yeah. So that's not good either, especially at low altitude. But it's what you have to do. You can't possibly maintain control of the aircraft if it's just spinning out of control. So in a Black Hawk, we don't have control of the engines on the flight controls. So the co-pilot or the non-flying pilot has to shut the engines off. So I looked over at Ray and I said, we lost the tail. We better pull them off. And he knew. He was an experienced guy. I actually had more experience than I did. And pulled the engines off. But we're spinning so fast that he said, and we talked about it on the ground afterwards, typical instructor pilots, he said, we're spinning so fast, the centrifugal force was causing him to not be able to lift his arms up over his head, which is where the engine power control levers are. So he got one to idle and got one about halfway off, which slowed the spin but didn't stop it. And now, with no engine power, we're falling out of the sky like a Coke machine. And all I could do is try to keep the aircraft from flipping upside down, which, again, I don't know if anything I did made a difference, honestly, but all I can tell you is we crashed right on the wheels. And that's the only reason I'm still here.
All right, so you're on impact. Now, you said something on the ground. Did Ray make it?
Yeah, okay. We all survived the crash.
Okay.
The crew chiefs were hurt really bad because they don't, first of all, they don't have as good as seats, at least in that version of the aircraft. It's been improved since. And they're probably not strapped in, meaning, they operate on what we call monkey harnesses back there.
Yeah.
So they're on a strap, but they're not strapped into their seats, which have, all of the crash survivability.
I use those as a jump master in Blackhawks.
Because it allows you to move around and do the things you need to do. And, you get in the seat when you have to land. Well, they didn't, obviously we're not planning to land, so they're probably not strapped in, or at least not likely that they're both strapped in. So, that violent crash, they were probably not going to make it. But Ray, I mean, he was not hurt as bad as I was. And we're talking, once I regained consciousness, we're talking about what happened, and there was no reason to talk about what happened. We should have been talking about, hey, the heck, we're going to survive the next 5 minutes here. But we did, and that's when he explained what he had tried to do. And then he was able to get himself out of the cockpit. There's no way I could get out. I had a femur fracture, crushed vertebrae in my spine. It's hard to get out of a Black Hawk cockpit when you're healthy. Mm-hmm. With those injuries, there's no way. So I just thought, I'm just going to fight it out from the cockpit.
I did not recall that your co-pilot had made it, but they didn't survive. Am I correct?
Well, they were killed in a firefight.
Yeah, they're all killed in the firefight. Yeah, I remember that now. All right, you're still stuck in the cockpit. I remember, I'm assuming it was when I read it, that you had a kind of an off the books weapon. Didn't you have an MP5 or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Was that standard issue, or
It
was
was
that
for us? Yeah,
it was. Okay.
Yeah, we used the MP5. They don't use it anymore, I don't think. But that was our we had an M9 pistol and an MP5.
So you wound up having to engage targets yourself while you're on the ground in the cockpit?
Actually, not from the cockpit. That's one area where Black Hawk Down deviates from what actually happened. I mean, I did consult a little bit on the movie, but really not much. I guess if they're going to exaggerate something and make you look better than you actually were, that's a good thing. But yeah, they have me, blasting away from the cockpit. It was amazing how quickly Gary Gordon and Randy Sugart got to the cockpit. There were no Somalis there yet. And that's why I hadn't fired any rounds. I had my MP5. I was ready to go, but nobody had showed up. And then all of a sudden,
just solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 3. We are there. We are in hour number 3 on a thankful Thursday. You know what? I played it at the beginning of the second hour. Let's do it again. Thankful.
You got to be more thankful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. You're a gentleman and a scholar.
We thank you so much for this bountiful harvest of Domino's, KFC, and always delicious Taco Bell.
Have you said thank you once?
Thank you.
I like it. I like it a lot. Thankful Thursday, the day before Friday. We're going to get you all the way to the weekend. You guys watch. You're going to get there. I guarantee. All right. Hey, listen, I'm going to break from the dippers for a minute because I'm watching the news right now. And this one, I believe, is in San Francisco. First of all, California law enforcement needs to get its act together. Let me phrase it. California elected leadership needs to get its act together. I am just like, I cannot believe that people are allowed to actually start fighting with law enforcement agents and jumping on top of their vehicles while they're trying to do their jobs. And it just happens. And the mayor of LA will say, you can't come in here and do these things. Well, how about this? Enforce your laws yourself and we won't have to. But nonetheless, I'm looking at it. And right now I'm watching as these ICE agents are having to use their batons, but they're using them like a brace. They're like holding it with each hand and they're using it to push people away. Sooner or later, the rules of engagement are going to have to be changed. And those ICE agents are going to need to have cattle prods or something so they can just just jack somebody for daring to fight with them.
They would never allow this, but I think one heck of a deterrent is if you attack ICE, then you get deported. you get
Yeah.
How about you go to the alligator Alcatraz and then on your way. There's got to be some sort of actual deterrence.
There does.
Something's not, obviously they're not doing enough.
There was a video during the Summer of Love in 2020, and it was, I believe, in Portland. It was one of my favorites. In fact, I watched it like almost too many times. I laughed when I saw it, but it was Antifa trying to, basically just like run amok around the federal courthouse. And there was one guy running by and he was literally grabbed by a member of the federal law enforcement who then just slung him to the ground hard.
I know what video you're talking about.
Do
It's
you?
great. Yeah.
You got to find the video, see if you can put it up there.
And then there's another one from the recent ICE protest, I believe, of this guy, getting into it with ICE, and he turns around and this kid does the most textbook tackle of him I've ever seen.
Yes,
near head, near shoulder, limp from the legs, and is somebody slow-moed it too, and it was just perfect.
Yeah, the guy had just thrown his drink on an ICE agent or something like that. And as the ICE agent turned around, that was a civilian who intervened. Went total Goldberg on him and just crushed him.
Textbook spear. Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome.
It was awesome. Well, I don't know how long they're going to do. I mean, I'm watching right now. They're playing it over and over on like a loop on Fox right now of all these people trying to stop the van from moving. And then they're pushing law enforcement so they can jump on the front of the van, which is trying to go down the road. It's completely unreal. And yet the ICE agents are showing amazing restraint because they're all carrying batons, but they're not whacking anybody in the head with them. But I'm telling you, sooner or later, someone's going to get whacked, and they're going to earn it.
And a lot of blame falls on the shoulders of Democrats who are not condemning it. Because do you know how common sense and easy it is just for, Hakeem Jeffries, a Nancy Pelosi, an AOC, a Chuck Schumer to be like, knock it off, knuckleheads. These are ICE agents. But yet they're being asked on the street, hey, do you condemn, these attacks against ICE? And they just don't say anything at all. And it's just, you not saying anything is an endorsement of it. I mean, I see John Fetterman is on X, rightfully saying, stop and stop attacking ICE. But like, how hard is it for AOC just to say, yeah, I think it's ridiculous. They shouldn't do that. While also you can have it, whatever stance you want on the immigration stuff, but attacking ICE, like that's I feel like that's a line that it's pretty obvious that congresswomen should object to, but obviously not apparently on the Democrat side.
You can't do that. You can't do that when you're a Democrat. It's just like it's just like giving over to the man at that point.
That's why they're so ridiculous. They don't even consider it in my mind as they're not accomplishing anything.
Yeah, these are not serious people.
No.
In this vein, let me run down something. So Jessica Tarlov, who is one of the Democrats who is on Fox. She's usually on like The View or the Five and that kind of stuff. But Jessica Tarlov was on Martha McCallum's show, and I'm looking at a little clip of it. This is her quote: Trump supporters didn't vote for people to show up at Home Depots. They didn't vote for people to show up at immigration courts. I don't know who people are, but I think what she's talking about is the roundups, like going like a roundup at a Home Depot. I got news. I voted for that.
I don't know what Trump supporters she's talking to, but I think almost everyone did. Yeah.
Yeah. I absolutely voted for this. What I voted for was round them up and send them home. That's what I voted for. If they're at Home Depot, go to Home Depot, round them up, send them home. If they are, hanging out at immigration courts, well, okay, I'm glad they're there. Guess what? If we know you got an outstanding warrant on you, we're going to pick you up, because what a great contained environment to pick you up in. Y'all are welcome to check in on this. 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. You tell me, does it bother you that ICE is doing roundups sometimes at places like Home Depot, or is this what you voted for? Me personally, this is what I voted for, man. Absolutely.
Oh, we got a couple of Rumble comments. We got two from Kip from Morgan County on the Rumble stream. First, talking about the AEA discussion during Butters and Lee. He said, no, they shouldn't be taking it, talking about money from the AEA. So candidates are advised they shouldn't, and school board candidates are flat told no by party rules. And then we got a second one that says, on the doctor, as a military member, who would give him immunity? DOJ, Congress, or JAG? Kip from Morgan County.
Who would give him? Well, in this case, whoever the prosecuting body is who offers immunity. I don't think this is going to wind up being a military issue, because he was detailed to the White House. So while he might still be subject to UCMJ, I think he's also in this case subject on the privilege issue to the licensure of his medical license as much as anything. And then he's subpoenaed by Congress. So I believe that he's going to wind up seeing a pardon coming from a non-military jurisdiction. Because that's where the testimony and the prosecution would lie. And if he's given, by the way, if he's given immunity by the federal government, that would extend to the military too, I would think. All right. Matthew from Washington says, hello, Phil and JP. Matthew from Washington checking in with y'all. Happy Thankful Thursday. I hope Comey, the Clintons, and all involved in the be held accountable. I think the American people deserve it. Man, I agree with that. That was the whole conversation we had earlier about accountability, and the Comey Brennan investigation finally underway, at least publicly underway. Brand spanking new in the text lines is Bob from Huntsville. Bob, we're glad you're there. Said President Biden can waive patient confidentiality and his doctor can talk freely. Congress should ask President Biden to waive if he was in charge and made all the decisions. Why would he refuse? That's a great point. He won't do it, but that's a great point. He could. The patient can waive the privilege and allow the testimony to go forward. But I don't think he's going to do that. Karen from Hickson, Tennessee says, my husband is thrilled to call me a right side ruffian as he's weary just saying that Karen just right of Attila the Hun. We're glad. And then says, thankfulness and thankful for you. Thank you, Karen. We're thankful for you too. I appreciate you very much. Chris from Gadsden is invoking the old view of Alabama using dogs and all that from the 1960s. And I'm saying, Chris, no. Although Although I have seen police dogs in roundups, and it's impressive to watch.
That may be a good deterrent. The dogs.
It'll be a front page photo in every liberal paper.
There's
superimposed next to one from black and white in the 60s. So I say don't do it. But it would be a hoot.
It certainly would. Yes.
David at Bucky says, Phil, just wait. I hope the ICE agents take what Senator, soon to be Governor Tuberville said to heart. Yeah. That was when the mayor of LA said she was going to intervene and try to stop the roundup in MacArthur Park in Los Angeles. And Tuberville's response was, lock her up. I'm for that. Chris from Starrett, Alabama said, this is exactly what I voted for. Nice. Mike from Huntsville says Biden's doctor has already waived the doctor-patient relations by disclosing publicly his condition. He released a report that was requested to be released by, and it did not give away major confidentialities. It was basically his report.
But he wasn't even invoking the patient relations now. He was invoking the fifth. So it's weird.
Well, he invoked both. He
did?
invoked privilege and he invoked the Fifth Amendment, which that's the curious piece. A couple more real quick. Jeff Rowe from Indiana says, hey, Phil, I think we should do is tell those 86,000 IRS agents that these illegals haven't paid their taxes, and then to sit back and watch them have fun because they'll be able to find them anywhere they go. There's a plan. Turn them all into ICE agents and just set them loose. Bert from Owens Crossroads says, I voted for the roundups at Home Depot, and I hope the day comes when the Pennsylvania announcements the PA announcements at the Home Depot are not in Espanol. I have not heard that before. I didn't know they did Spanish speaking announcements. Ben from Decatur says, regarding the illegals, voted for rounding them up and sending them home. Tarlov is never correct. I agree with you, sir. Thank you very much. Nofre from Lexington. Nofre sends me just a meme that says Trump was right. What's at the bottom of it? About everything. Okay. Nice. Last one for the break. Bob from Madison. Yes, I voted for this. Take me to a break, JP. Take me to a break indeed. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
And Randy are standing next to the cockpit. And I'm like, wow, this is over. There's a rescue force here.
Which is an amazing story in itself. I mean, both of them wound up with the Medal of Honor posthumously. But I recall reading that they both requested 7 times to be put on the ground, knowing full well that there was only going to be 2 of them and no telling how long till any guys of the Rangers got there.
You're right about all of that. And again, I only know about it secondhand because obviously I'm not on the aircraft with them. But they were told initially no, and eventually convinced the leadership that if they were not let in, we were lost. And you don't know what's in the mind of someone else, but they had to know, hey, this is going to be dicey at a minimum, because it took 8 hours for another American to get to our crash site.
Yeah, which is crazy when you think about the fact that as you were going down, you could see the airfield roughly 2 miles away, and yet it took 8 hours for anybody to get there.
And it's because, well, we were resource constrained, and there were so many things happening. You had 6-1's crash site, you had the convoy, you had the target, now you had my crash site. So really, the commander's got 4 things that he's got to deal with, and he didn't even really have the resources for one.
By the way, I'm going to chase a rabbit real quick. I don't know if you heard this yet, but the whole base renaming thing that happened.
I was going to bring this up
about Gary Gordon.
Yeah. And it's a brilliant solution. And I just read it a couple days ago.
Yeah. For those who don't know, that Fort Gordon was one of the names that nobody knew was apparently tied to a Confederate. I didn't know that Benning was. I didn't know that Rucker was. I just went and trained there, as I'm sure you probably did. But Fort Gordon got renamed to something, but Fort Gordon's getting its name back for your rescuer, Gary Gordon.
Right.
Yeah. That's I think that's pretty. Now we got to find a Fort Shugart somewhere.
Yeah. They might have to create one. Yeah.
What do you recall about Shugart and Gordon being on the ground? I mean, I've read their story separately. I've read it in your book. But give me and the listeners, when they got on the ground and were talking, what were your thoughts? What was the conversation?
It was brief, purely mission focused. I mean, there's no doubt about it. They knew, hey, look, we got to get him out of the cockpit, meaning me. because I'm too vulnerable there. I'm sitting up, basically up off the ground, elevated, and so that was one of the primary things they wanted to get done, is get me out of there, and then essentially, as well as I could, set up a perimeter. Now, the way the geography of this crash site was, there was a wall right to the right. The nose is pointing forward as I'm sitting here, and there's a wall right to the right. Now it's just a corrugated tin wall, basically, but still, there's no way for someone to access the site from there. So I believe their decision was, we're going to go secure the left side, put me on the right, and that is in fact where the attack primarily came from, was the left side. So I can hear it, and then I could see Somalis, onesie twosies. I fired all the rounds in my weapon at the Somalis that tried to come in on the right side, but the bulk of the attack came from the left side.
How long was Shugart and Gordon in the mix? I mean, how long until they were actually taken?
It's hard to say. I know there's an official timeline somewhere. I honestly don't recall. Time is so hard to judge when things are in that state of chaos. I would say probably 10 minutes, maybe 15, from the time they showed up to the side of the aircraft to, Gary went down first, and at that point, Randy's almost out of ammunition already. And he came around and he asked me where the crew chief's weapons were, and I told him, and he went in, grabbed one, and then he gave me what I believe was Gary's weapon, which still had rounds in it, because I had fired all the rounds out of my MP5. And then he went around the nose of the bird. He made a quick radio call, and we were told on the radio that a reaction force was en route. Again, cause for a little bit of optimism here. Yeah. And then he went and made his last stand on the other side.
Were 160th aircraft overhead? I mean, were you getting any kind of air cover at all when you were down?
Well, we're not getting any air cover, but that call that he made that call on what we call the fire net, meaning it's a fire support net. So he's talking to attack Little Birds probably. And I think I recognize the voice of the guy who answered him that said a reaction force is en route. So they're overhead. But again, you're talking 4 targets here, and the commander's got to put
he's got triage
his assets where they can do the most good. And right now, that's the main target and 6-1, because 6-1 was close to the main target. The convoy's too fluid. It's all over the place. And then we are, unfortunately, just a couple guys that, and I don't criticize or fault him for this. He's resource constrained. He's only got so much he can do. We were kind of left on our own.
Left on your own for how long? Do you recall? And we are back. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. Bulletproof influence, I like to say. Hey, if you heard my monologue earlier, and by the way, I'm going to Dipper number 2, just for a little bit here. Go woke, go broke. Go woke, go broke. If you heard my monologue earlier, I took issue with the idea of woke heroes. Like, why do they keep screwing around with Captain America? Why do they keep messing with Superman? Why are they determined? I say they, the left. Why are they determined to soften up the heroes, to make them more amenable? Why to go for social justice and to make sure that the world understands? Stop it. So if you haven't heard, the latest edition of the Superman reboot is coming out I think this weekend. And it's already got conservative world up in arms. I don't plan to see it. If it comes on a Sunday afternoon and I'm about to fall asleep on the couch, on a Sunday, I might watch it. But I have no desire to go to the theater to see it. The one I do want to see is the new Jurassic Park movie. That one looks good. Just saying. Where'd you go?
I was just saying, yeah, I agree. I don't know. I'm not much of a Jurassic Park fan, but I did see the trailer for this one look really good.
This one looks sick. But Superman right now has got trouble. Superman is apparently gone woke. Superman right now, the director, James Gunn, came out the other day and said that people need to understand and just go ahead and accept the fact that this movie will have politics in it and that Superman is an immigrant. Why is that? How about this? Superman is a superhero and it's truth, justice, and the American way. Oh, wait, is it anymore? Because the star of the show what's his last name? Corn Sweat. What's the guy's name? I can't remember his name. It's not Corn Sweat, is it? What's the guy's name that's starring as Superman?
Corn Sweat.
Okay, I was close.
Yes, Corn Sweat.
Mr. Sweaty Corn.
Sweaty Corn.
So Sweaty Corn
Sweaty
said.
Corn.
So, okay, Sweaty Corn said. He came out and said that the truth, justice, and the way did not include America. I mean, he just decided to leave that out altogether. What's happening right now is you're watching as Superman is becoming a political statement for the left. Why even do this? And by the way, don't you know that at least I take it back. I hope to find that in the studios, they all went, oh God. I hope that somebody called him on the phone and said, I don't care what you think you can say. You didn't pay for the movie. Thank you very much. Look at what happened with Snow White. Snow White is one of the biggest bombs in Disney history. The most recent live action edition of Snow White. First, they couldn't do actual dwarves because that was politically incorrect. So they had tall people playing dwarves, and it made the little people angry. It was just awful. So all kinds of stuff went on with it. Then you had Rachel Ziegler, who starred as Snow White, come out and make all kinds of inane comments about how we're not going to do the misogynistic thing where the prince is actually, having to, and she's relying on the prince to wake her up from her sleep. We're not doing the whole love thing. And the world was like, wait a minute, this is Snow White. Why did you feel the need to wokeify it? The movie bombed. Biggest bomb in Disney history, I think. And then you've got Captain America: Brave New World. That came out this year. Now, there's a lot of people that said, why'd they have to make Captain America black? Was that a thing? Well, that was actually in the comic books. That did happen. The Falcon did become, I feel like I'm a comic book guru. I'm really not, but Captain America did.
I can confirm.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
He did pass the shield to Falcon, and Falcon became Captain America in a different sense. But the movie that just came out most recently, Anthony Mackie, who plays Falcon / Captain America, he made a statement in an interview, I think on BBC, that he said, Captain America stands for a lot of things, but I don't think America's one of them. And I'm thinking,
it's in the name.
The name is Captain America. What is your point, sir? Well, that's where the left keeps going. And then you look at it and go, there's times when it just gets really too far. Like, how about the time, and I'm holding it up to the camera. How about the time most recently in 2021? Is that making the screen, bud? Right now, bud?
Yeah,
there it is.
Great.
Okay, yeah. If you look at it, that's quite the that's quite the little guy. So this is the gay homeless Captain America, because that was necessary, because there's a very large audience of gay homeless people that need a hero.
Gay and homeless, yeah.
Gay and homeless. He's a social justice warrior. So in 2021, I believe it was, Marvel decided to unveil a new version of Captain America, which involved Captain Americas, like there was different ones. And everybody had one. There was one for this community and that community. All the intersectionalities had one. I don't know if there's one in the wheelchair or not, but I'm sure there probably was. There had to have been somebody in there, from this walk of life and that walk of life. And not to be forgotten was the gay homeless Captain America, who was a social justice warrior for the disenfranchised who aren't often heard about in society.
Is there a cis white male Captain America represent?
The original one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they just neglected that. But everybody else gets a Captain America, sure.
Well, just to go ahead and add fuel to the fire, Disney just announced that they're laying off thousands of people, thousands, and the conservative world's looking at it going, well, that's called go woke, go broke. We'll see. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. Do you have a rough timeline of how long you were there?
Well, when Gary and Randy went down, it's 15 minutes. It's over. They overran the site. Yeah.
Which I'm on the one hand sounds like nothing, but it's also an eternity, I'm sure, when you're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you there, and I'm going to be asking you some questions. Your book is extremely descriptive about some things that happened in those moments immediately after Gary and Randy went down. You talk about the fact that in the movie it shows it. You're there, you're by yourself, the crowd of Somalis finds you, and then somebody knocks you out. Now, in your book, you talked about it in more detail. They were trying to rip your boots off. And then there's this really odd moment where they were stripping your clothes off, and then they almost felt embarrassed, you said, and they kind of put your clothes back on you. Do you recall that moment?
Absolutely. It was very weird. I mean, they're stripping all my stuff off. And, of course, one of the issues here is I've got a compound femur fracture. So when they're trying to get my boot off, my youngest played hockey. And when he was a kid, I always tied his skates and took his skates off. And every time I took his skates off, I thought about them trying to take my boot off.
Wow.
And because you never unlace it enough, right? And it's always going to be hard to get off. And at some point, my femur goes out the backside of my leg. And I believe it was because they were, again, just pulling on it, trying to get that boot off. And obviously going back and forth, and finally it just punches through the back of my leg. That's the only explanation for when that could have happened in my mind. Maybe it happened later, earlier, I'm not sure. But anyhow, I can't feel anything at that point anyway. It's just overwhelming pain across the whole body. And then they're trying to get my survival gear off. And I used to make a joke about this. We didn't have regular survival gear that the regular Army units had. We had, we called it ninja gear, and it had buckles on it that are like a water ski vest, right? You have to squeeze
the Fast-Tex
little
buckles.
tangs together to get it to unbuckle. And I always used to say the Somalis don't water ski. So I actually had to help them get that off because, they're pulling and pulling and pulling. And I'm like, well, all right, I'll just undo the buckle. So I undid the buckle and they got it off. And they got me down to my brown T-shirt, which when you see the interrogation video, you can tell I've still got that on, and my desert tan trousers. Now, they were going for the trousers, but because it's very humid there and we weren't taking a lot of showers, our flight surgeon said, you're probably better off not wearing underwear because it keeps you a little bit drier. So I was not wearing underwear. And they start taking my trousers off. And again, this is the only explanation I can come up with. They realized that I'm about to be naked and changed their mind and stopped. And in the end, it had probably a benefit in that it provided a little bit of protection from the elements for that now open wound I had on my right leg. Otherwise it had been rubbing in the dirt. So again, just a whole bunch of little weird,
crazy little surreal moments like that. Yeah. But one of the worst moments, and you said in your book, you actually had told yourself you were never going to tell that story until the book was actually put together later. You decided to do it. But at one point, one of the Somalis clubbed you with something. And later on, you remembered what it was. Do you mind talking about that?
Well, the reason, and here's the rationale. What happened at the crash site was unimaginable. I've been in combat before. I've seen people die before. I've been angry at the enemy before, but I never thought humans could do what they did. And I guess I wanted to protect the families of my comrades from knowing about this. So I sort of watered it down a little bit when I first talked about it, not knowing they're seeing bodies dragged through the streets. I didn't know that. It's on the front page of our newspaper at home. The wife and kids of who we think is not conclusive evidence to indicate that it was one person versus another. There's probably three possibilities. But in their minds, that's dad, or that's my husband. But I didn't know any of that. So I'm sort of trying to keep them from knowing that these horrific things happened. And then I get released and I see all this. Oh my goodness, I didn't realize it.
Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. This show, goes from Huntsville back on over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back on over to Gadsden. I'm talking about all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn. Straight across the line from there to what we call Fort Benning again. Benning, and then big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. And then there's all of y'all in the whole wide world going to the World Wide Web and, oh yeah, dialing in and watching the show live in studio every single day on places like Rumble, YouTube, X, Facebook, and on our rightsidemedia.org website. Thank you. And then you podcasters, the one who catch it after the fact, we love y'all too. Thank you, everybody, for making this something that we enjoy being a part of with you. It wouldn't make any difference in the world for us to be doing this if y'all weren't out there. You're the ones that make it work. I got a couple of texts I'll get real quick. Gary MS from Huntsville, I guess with regards to the what's he looking for here? Is he sending me a link and then commenting on it? Or
I think he sent the link of the Newsweek, but I think he's saying sorry, not sorry for the deportations happening.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, good deal. Chris from Gadsden checking in again says Snow White was not white as snow, nor was she fairer than the queen. Yeah, they actually, that's the other thing. They had a Hispanic female play the part of Snow White. That's not, no. Anyway, Bert from Owens Crossroads says all these attacks on ICE officers must be ICE officers must be thinking that ICE is operating under an old Border Patrol policy of under attack, run away. Bert has seen that time, by the way. All right, let me jump on something that I've had sitting on the desk for the last couple of days. This is I'm gonna get Dipper number 3. What do you think about that, JP?
Hey, I think it'll help you with your Grazer John.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Nice evergreen green news scam Dipper there.
I don't know. You've had. I tell you what. Let's do this. I need some screaming goat. Ready? Hit it.
Yeah. Hold on.
Ready?
Do it one more time.
Hit it. Okay, now I should get points for John because that's our favorite sound effect. All right, so Politico has a piece. I'm doing this thing on recouping the Green New Steel. That's what I call it. They call it the Green New Deal. I call it the Green New Steel. That all the things that the Biden administration and the Democrats who controlled the House and the Senate at the time put in place, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, whoever had the auto pen, they were going at it, man. Money here, money there. We're going to do all kinds of green energy stuff, subsidies for this car. We're going to build new infrastructure for charging stations. We're going to downgrade oil and gas. We're going to upgrade solar and wind. We're going to do all the things, except what they were really doing was creating a false market, which is now, by the way, correcting itself. But one of the things that I've got here in this article from Politico, Phil, did you go to Politico? I did. Dateline last Thursday. Before the big, beautiful bill passed, there was questions about some of the more conservative members of the House. Would they vote for it? The article from Politico says conservatives are saying that Trump won them over by promising a crackdown on all those renewable energy credits. Chip Roy being one of them. Chip Roy said, we believe the administration is aligned with us on terminating those green new scam subsidies. We believe we're going to get a 90+% of all future projects terminated. And we talked to lawyers in the administration. We believe it's true. Well, it was true. So the $7,500 tax credit for buying an electric vehicle went away. The subsidies that propped up the EV market, the manufacturers, went away. All of this was huge. It was a clear indication that the world is changing. Now, you're starting to see the results. Dateline today, I pulled this off of New York Post. Honda pulls the plug on large electric SUVs as driver demand for battery-powered cars plummets. Well, this is what happens when you had a false market. It didn't take them days to realize they didn't want to stay in this. So New York Post says Honda has reportedly put the brakes on a large electric SUV following President Trump's decision to cut EV incentives in the U.S. The Japanese giant is preparing to roll out a new range of battery-powered models based on their SUVs and sedans. Originally planned to follow the 5-seat SUV with a 7-seater, and has now pulled the plug on that project. They're watching as the incentives, the subsidies, the underwriting from the federal government just goes away. Y'all, listen. Here's what's been happening. And I'm going to break it down to put it down here where the baby goats can get to it. Sometimes I have to picture things more at a local level for me to really grasp some things. Picture this. You are in a town where there's only one grocery store. And the grocery store has got a certain amount of produce. But then the mayor and the town council say, we're going to mandate that everybody has to buy X amount of produce, except that it's not available at the store, the one store you've got. What do? Well, first thing you have to do is, if you're really going to comply with the law, I know this is fanciful, but go with me. If you're really going to comply with the law, you have to drive to another town. Does that make sense? Well, they said you had to do it. That's the law. So then you got the local store. The local store says, we can't get those goods in. We'll go under. So the mayor says, that's okay. We'll give you subsidies. We'll buy it. You sell it. Oh, well, we can do that. So now taxpayers are paying for the goods and then going to the store and paying for them again. Why would that be okay? Short answer, it's not. That's exactly what happened with electric vehicles. First, they weren't available, but they wanted them to be available. So they told the manufacturers, you have to make them. Well, we can't make them. Nobody will buy them. Okay, tell you what, we'll use taxpayer dollars. We'll prop up your factory. You build more of them, and then we'll prop up the buyers and give them $7,500 to buy them with, and then everybody will have one, and that way we'll prove to the world that we're right. Oh, that's great. Let's do it. And as soon as the subsidies went away, poof, so did the market. That's exactly like the grocery store analogy I just gave you. Unbelievable.
The grocery store analogy sounds a lot like Zoran Mamdani, by the way. What he's doing in New York.
Zoran Mamdani.
Almost to a T, actually.
Is that guy sounds like he should be a magician on a vaudeville stage. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Zoran Mamdani is here.
And with this magic trick, I'll turn New York City into the worst city in America. Shabam.
That's really not funny.
No,
JP.
It's
not. Make a video out of us is doing that right there. That was a good. All right. Listen, but yeah, so the first example I've got is that immediately after the big, beautiful bill was signed last Friday, Honda has already pulled the brakes on its next project in the EV market because they're seeing a tanking of the market. You reckon? Yeah, we do. The green new steel, though, it went so far. I've got an article here from Daily Caller. President Donald Trump, this is July 7th. So this is what, Monday? President Donald Trump issued an executive order calling for the end of the green energy subsidies by strengthening provisions in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act on Monday night, citing national security concerns. The order argues that a heavy reliance on green energy subsidies compromised the reliability of the power grid and undermined energy independence. Trump called for the U.S. to rapidly eliminate federal green energy subsidies. So what he's saying there now is, hey, the One Big Beautiful Bill stops it going forward, but all you departments that were pursuing this with monies from the previous year, just go ahead and stop. Just bring it to a halt. We don't need to keep spending money to allegedly built out EV infrastructure. We don't need to keep putting subsidies into wind farms off the coast. We don't need to keep building solar farms with Chinese solar panels. Here's the thing. I don't mind any of these happening as long as they're done correctly. Where the left did not know how to do things, where the left's really screwed up here, was when the left decided they wanted it all and they wanted it now and they were going to pay for it with your tax dollars. Like the EV, I got news. Y'all, taxpayers, paid to have them built and then you had to pay again to buy them. Think about it. That's exactly what happened. Tax dollars are forcing the manufacturer to build something, but then you're being given money to go and buy the something that you technically already paid for with your tax dollars. What a scam. Well, what Trump is saying right now is stop the madness. But what I'm telling you is nobody, including Trump, minds the idea of solar farms or minds the idea of wind making power generation. But don't try to foist it on us when it's not ready for the mainstream. Don't try to say it's a complete substitute and we're shutting down all the coal-fired plants and we're shutting down nuclear and we're shutting down, oil drilling and all of the above, y'all. And oh, by the way, make the so-called renewable energies, make them stand on their own 2 feet. Make them stand on their own 2 feet. The government should not have to pay for an industry. It shouldn't. I understand doing tax breaks and I understand doing things to try and bring a factory to your hometown. This is not that. This is not economic development. This is creating a false market. And we can't ever let it happen that way again. And so right now, I've got a stack of stories, and I won't even get to all of them. But Trump, Daily Caller, Trump has issued an order to end the green energy gravy train. There's that one. Daily Caller again, also just last Monday. Blackouts coming if America continues with Biden-era green frenzy. There's the issue of whether or not the so-called renewables are really going to be sustainable if we have a problem. Then you've got China. China right now, according to Bloomberg points out that China dominates the clean technology manufacturing as tariffs begin to reshape the trade flow. What that means is if you want to build a solar farm, you almost have to buy Chinese goods. If you want to build something that requires massive battery systems, you're going to be using lithium from China. You're going to be onshoring things and importing it and blessing the Chinese because we mandated something on ourselves. Well, when the market can build it and sustain it and build a better mousetrap here, then we'll do it. All I know is this. Honda just pulled the plug. Guess what? Carscoops.com. Nissan and Infiniti have also delayed 2 other electric crossovers, putting the project off by almost a year. Because they recognize that the one big beautiful bill changed the dynamic. The gravy train was over. We're recouping the green new steel. How do you like us now? And yes, I voted for this. There. I got that off my chest.
There you go. 3 dipper day.
I feel better about me. Let me get a couple of quick text messages before I go to the break. Dave from Capshaw says, my wife said I should make the screaming goat the ringtone of my phone. Wow. Hit it. I think you'd be a very unpopular person if your phone went off in a meeting or in church.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Mike from Huntsville says, although it was a lie, use immunity would be appropriate for this, but a Rule 11 proffer in a grand jury. Okay, Mike, you need to speak in complete sentences, but I think I know what you're saying. Yes, I think there is a way to make a proffer of something that could then be used in a grand jury setting, which is confidential. But then offer up immunity if it was worthy of something that was worth giving you immunity for. Talking about the doctor for Biden. Tim from Madison said, I thought nuclear was the cleanest of them all. Well, it is, but it scares the left. They're very scared of nuclear. And right now I'm going to a break. Take me to a break, JP. Last break of the day. Phil Williams, Thankful Thursday. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
Already all out in the public domain. So that's when I decided, well, there's no harm in me telling what actually happened. And it was interesting to me that nobody had questioned it anyway, because if you got butt stroked, which is what I said was originally happened,
right,
with a rifle butt, hard enough to break your eye socket. I can still feel it right here. My eye socket was broken. My nose was broken, but there's no bruise. I mean, you're gonna bruise up if you get hit that hard by a rifle butt, right? And you can see in the interrogation video, there's no bruise.
Right.
But no one ever questioned that, and that's because it wasn't a rifle butt. I mean, and the best I can tell, it was a body part. I mean, it was very heavy and soft, like flesh. And that's why I always thought, well, it's just probably
like the
arm
or leg
of someone. Yeah. I mean, that's the only explanation. But it was, again, hard for me to fathom that these people have turned so much against us. Because you mentioned George Bush earlier.
Yeah.
He visited Somalia before he left office.
Yeah.
And there were parades in the street for our presence there because we had brought stability. We had brought an end to the fighting. We had brought an end to the starvation. And they were big, big fans of the U.S. And here we are 10 months later, and they're doing this to us. I mean, you heard the quote, hearts and minds of the people. You can't lose the hearts and minds of the people any worse than that. I mean, that's as bad as it gets, to go from celebrating the fact that you're here to desecrating the remains of my comrades and cutting people into pieces. I mean, it's just insane.
And desecrating the corpses. I mean, we saw a little bit of that in Baghdad. I mean, I wasn't there. I won't try to portray that I was, but I did have my team sergeant saw the images of, and it was one of his friends from back home hanging from a bridge. There's a different level of depravity, but you witnessed it firsthand. And I got to ask you, so when when they clubbed you with the body part. Did you know at the time that was what it was, or did you process it and see it later in your mind?
No, I think I suspected that that's what it was. And, you know, I can't guarantee 100% that is what it was,
Yeah.
but I'm relatively certain that it was. I just remember looking at the guy. I didn't cry out or anything. I just looked at, I probably with, you know, I was incredulous. I just couldn't believe that this could be happening at this point. It's not something, you know, I guess I grew up watching sort of old school war movies, right? Where people still act like humans, you know, they're not, you know, at the level that these people were at that point. And I don't know.
Were they all chewing cotton? I mean, was this
probably?
Yeah. For those who don't know, is it a root or is it a leaf? What is it? But they chew it.
It looks like grass clippings almost. Actually, it comes in a little bundle because they brought some. There's a funny story about that in captivity, and I guess I'll tell it now. So
go ahead.
So I'm in captivity, and at this point, I've been with the same guy for a few days. Farimbi was his name, and I'm starting to know him a little bit. He's kind of a goofy dude. But he was pretty high up in Adid's organization, and he had been put in charge of my well-being, I'll say, making sure nobody else got me, essentially, or certainly didn't get rescued. And so he had 3 underling guards that sort of supported him. So the 4 of them are, you know, making sure that nobody figures out where I am and that I've got some level of security. And one of them goes off somewhere and comes back and has caught. And they're right in the room with me. And they're dividing it up. And initially they make 4 piles. And then Farimbi says, no, you know, and he points to me like he needs his share, right? So I'm not saying anything. I'm just going to see how this plays out. And now they make 5 piles. So he gives one to each of these 3 underling guys, and they take off. He throws a bundle to me. When the other 3 guys leave the room, I throw my bundle back to him. So he ends up getting a double rack, basically. And he just big old smile on his face. And he ends up, you know, again, I don't know really what the effects of this stuff are, but he ends up with what seemed to be a hangover after he consumed all of this. But it was, I don't want to say I had some kind of grand strategy here, but common sense will tell you if you can build a rapport with somebody who has control over your destiny, that's probably a good thing. You know, I guess this is what people that resist law enforcement don't
understand. He's the guy that you said was clean cut and wearing, you know, linen slacks.
No, that's not for him.
That's not him.
That's Abdi.
Okay.
Yeah, he was like the minister of public relations or something. Abdi was. Yeah, okay. But Farimbi's a little bit lower level guy.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just giving you all the truth you can slap on a bumper sticker. Using some of that bulletproof influence. Yes, we are. Steve from Tennessee checked in. He says, note that there are no Democrats calling for the release of the Epstein list. Huh. Interesting. I had not caught that, but Steve from Tennessee, you are always insightful. Mike from Huntsville says, Castigar hearing, okay, but he is guilty of defrauding USA 18 U.S. Code 371. Okay, fair. I'll check that out. John from Huntsville says Lee gets a solid A for her solid performance. Butters gets an A+ for his outstanding performance. Sound effect master JP gets an A+ for his magnificent performance, which means today's winner is obviously the incredible Phil Williams with a beyond perfect A+ for his absolutely brilliant triple dipper performance and for getting JP to play the screaming goat sound effect. Congratulations. By the way, JP, I'm looking forward to your sports segment tomorrow. Nice. Well played, sir. All right, let me run to the phones real quick because I believe Jeff Rowe from Indiana is on the line. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
I think I'm gonna make that screaming goat my alarm now. Because I was taking a little siesta there, and the screaming goat come on, and I was like, oh, what? I know what. I better wake up.
Oh man, that'll snap you out of a deep sleep, won't it?
Yes, it will.
Oh God. Well, how's the lovely wife doing today? Is she doing good?
She's doing real good. Yeah, she's just kind of taking it easy and not doing a whole lot. Sitting outside on the porch in front of the pool there a little bit with the grandkids, and that's about it.
Y'all live by the river too, don't you?
Yeah. Sometimes the river is really close to me.
I know you showed me pictures that one time when it was like almost up against your garage.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad she's doing better, man. Well, hey, listen, I covered some ground today. I talked about some accountability on like Comey and Brennan. I talked about go woke, go broke. I talked about recouping the Green New Steel. And then we have Butters and Lee. What is your pleasure, sir? What are your thoughts?
The Comey and Brennan.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to have to, for all these years that went by and stuff, the only ones we ever seen punished basically was Republicans for doing basically nothing, like, the one with the Nixon tattoo on his back. I can't remember his name.
The Nixon tattoo.
Oh, yeah. They got him. The one they all showed up from the frogmen and everything else surrounded his house.
Like G. Gordon Liddy? Who are we talking about here?
No, this is
Roger Stone, isn't it?
name.
Roger Stone. Oh, Roger Stone.
Roger Stone. Stone. Yes.
I forgot about that.
He's got a full. Yeah, he's got a Nixon tattoo on his back.
It is. And it's really weird. It's very bizarre.
Put it up on the screen if you can. That is just okay. So what about Roger Stone and the Nixon tattoo? Or are we chasing a rabbit right now, or is that part of your commentary?
No. I'm just saying, that the Democrats went after everyone, no matter what their involvement.
Yeah.
And made things up. But make it so that when Democrats do bad things, Democrats get punished, because they sure as heck don't hold back when the Republicans do anything, and whether they do it or not.
No, I agree. And this is, I mean, if the law cannot be equal and blindfolded, then it's really not a rule of law. It has to be a rule of law. Not that the law is ruling, but that there are rules to the law. And part of the rule is even application. And if you have, good enough for me, but not for thee, as part of the legal processes, then you just blow trust in the legals all around. I mean, the judicial system is just suddenly, second rate at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I get so tired of it, like saying unequal justice. It's like when you and I go out and commit a crime, and for whatever reason, they throw the book at me and let you off scot-free. I think I should be able to sue get out for unequal justice at that time, because if we did the same thing and everything was equal, one guy gets off because of who he is, and the other guy gets put under the wheel on the train. There should be something done about that. I'm all for equal justice instead of this guy gets one thing and this guy gets something else. It's totally different.
Totally agree. Hey man, I'm seconds away from the music playing, but tell your sweet wife that you deserve. She deserves to be pampered a little bit more by you. All right.
I'm going to try my best. I'm almost to Kentucky, so I'm doing okay.
All right, good deal. We'll see you, man. Take care. Buddy. All right, you guys, that is it for Thankful Thursday. And I'm not kidding when I say it. There are more of us than there are them. God is still on his throne. Y'all stay in the fight. We'll see you tomorrow.